years old, but his identity has not been released. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. National and local officials are watching developments in the Middle East carefully after American bombers struck nuclear sites in Iran. Here's ABC's Andrew Dimbert.
Here at home, law enforcement also on high alert. Homeland Security warning state and local officials of a heightened threat environment. One group tracking threats to Jewish institutions says more than 1,600 violent online posts have been flagged since Saturday night's airstrikes.
Iran says its military will decide the timing, nature, and scale of its response. Americans in Qatar are being told to shelter in place because of the tensions with Iran. The U.S. Embassy posted a notice online today calling that advice a move made out of an abundance of caution. State Department officials had earlier warned Americans to be alert worldwide after the U.S. targeted nuclear sites in Iran. There have not been any specific threats. Your money at this moment, the Dow is up 78 points to 42,285. Coming up, it's going to start to warm up after that nice cool weekend. KSL weather is next. KSL News Time 9:02.
The sources where we get our news matters.
When you listen to Utah's Morning News, we want you to feel the stories are important to you and trustworthy. This is Amanda Dixon.
And I'm Andy Farnsworth. Join us weekday mornings on KSL News Radio.
This is Christian Staples with Arctic Spas. It is time for our annual spring clearance sale at Arctic Spas. Tons of hot tubs, swim spas, all-weather pools, saunas, and cold tubs all on sale at up to $7,500 off. Yes, up to $7,500 off. Just in time for the summer fun to begin. Plus, we have a few models left over from last year, like an Arctic Spa Polaris, a 7-foot by 7-foot with 40 massaging jets, 2 pumps, ozone water purification, UV water purification, multicolored LED lights, and a waterfall, now discounted to $89.95. Swim spas starting out at $19,995. This brings a pool to your backyard all year long, but especially for the family fun this summer. Comfort and convenience is on sale with our automated saltwater system. Or save even more with almost new refurbished Arctic Spas from years past. Start out online at ArcticSpasUtah.com to pick out your favorite spa. Then stop by one of our 3 Arctic Spa stores covering all of Utah: Salt Lake, American Fork, and St. George. Arctic Spas, the only spa built for Utah's harsh climate.
We were living in D.C. and we were ready to buy our first house, but it was in Salt Lake City.
I found out through family that the house that my dad grew up in was put on the market.
We had less than 24 hours to put an offer in, and it happened to be on New Year's Eve.
So we immediately contacted our realtor. She was on it from the very beginning. We got the house.
We got the house. Being 2,000 miles away, our realtor really helped us. And there's no way we would have gotten the house if we didn't have our realtor.
Discover how a realtor can make a real difference at myrealtorstory.com.
Progressive knows if you have to choose between everyday life and your RV, RV wins.
What, are you going to take the RV to the lake or clean out your closet?
RV wins!
Putting the dishes away or taking the RV camping?
RV wins!
Cleaning the fridge or taking a trip to the beach?
RV wins!
You might want to clean the fridge real quick because, mold.
We clean out the fridge, then take the RV out.
With Progressive, you can bundle your RV with your home or auto and save with a discount and spend more time enjoying those savings in your RV. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company, affiliates, and other insurers not available in all states and situations.
Get in the zone, AutoZone.
Jane has 150,000 miles on her truck, and she's proud of that. Jane's secret? AutoZone, where friendly AutoZoners help her find the right parts. Jane's brother Josh only cares that his car starts and goes, but when it doesn't, he also goes to AutoZone, where friendly AutoZoners help with free services. No hassles, just help. Everything you need, nothing you don't.
Get in the zone, AutoZone.
Restrictions apply.
At KSL News Radio, we have a 30-year legacy of honoring Utah teachers, but we can't do it without your help. Please tell us about an important teacher in your life on the KSL Teacher Tribute Wall, presented by Cypress Credit Union. Each month, one lucky teacher wins a $500 gift card from Cypress Credit Union, a $250 gift card to Harmon's, plus season tickets to Hale Center Theater. Say thanks to your teacher today at kslnewsradio.com/teacher from Cypress Credit Union and KSL News Radio.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Mountain America's Double Rewards credit card promotion. Here's Heather Kelly.
Well, the good news is all the crashes have disappeared. Most of them were up in Weber County this morning. Still have a few brake lights from time to time, both directions of I-15 heading toward downtown Salt Lake. But for the most part, it's a really good drive. The only major slowing we're seeing is eastbound I-80, the right lane between Kimball Junction and US 40, very slow. The magic has arrived in Salt Lake City. Celebrate the filmmaking magic and more at Harry Potter the Exhibition, now open at the shops at Southtown. Tickets at harrypotterexhibition.com. Heather Kelly in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather right now, we're going to see the leftover cool down from the weekend stick around today, but it'll steadily get warmer until we hit the high 90s Friday through the weekend. Right now, it's 55 degrees and partly cloudy in Salt Lake City. I'm Andy Farnsworth from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
The all-new Inside Sources. Your inside access to the people and policies shaping Utah's future. Here are Greg Skordas and Holly Richardson on KSL News Radio.
You know, we get here on Monday mornings, and there's never a shortage of news. We start talking, Holly and I, Sunday night, Monday morning. There's just so much going on, and good and bad. We're going to get to a lot of it today. There's the bombing in Iran. So much is going on there. The release of an individual involved in the No Kings protest on Friday. But Holly, I want to start with the fire situation that's going on right now in Washington County. It has now gotten to the point where homes are being involved. And last week when we talked to one of the individuals on the ground, there were no homes, but it was only a matter of time, and I think it's up to over 5,000 acres.
Right, and when we talked on Friday, it was 500 acres. Now it's almost 6,000, at least as of yesterday.
Yeah.
And a couple of the homes have burned of firefighters who are still out there fighting the fire.
Yeah, and we're told that at least 2 of the homes belong to firefighters. I mean, it's just such sad and such irony. We do have with us this morning Candy Stevenson, Public Information Officer with the Great Basin Incident Management Team. Candy, can you tell us where you are now and what you can see, what you're observing?
Oh, yeah, thank you for having me on this morning. So this morning I was up at the briefing that we had at the Pine Valley Fire Station, so I did see get into Pine Valley this morning. There's lots of haziness, so if you're driving around anywhere around that area, know that the Pine Valley itself is closed, but anywhere around that area, we are seeing a lot of smoke and haze from that. So just watch out for driving conditions in the area. So we kind of can't expect to be, affected by smoke in the area for a while. And it is up to 7,045 acres now.
Wow.
Still 0% contained.
Wow. So how many homes have been lost to this point?
So our count is 13 homes that have been lost in Pine Valley. The good news with that is that there are lots of homes that were saved, a lot more homes that were saved. The 13 homes is devastating that's a loss. The firefighters are still working around that area and trying to make sure that area is all mopped up and no more homes are in danger. So they're concentrated most in the area around the structures.
Excuse me, Candy, can you tell us about our listeners about the area? That is to say, are these homes largely recreational, part-time? Are the people that live there full-time? And what is the area like that's been burned?
Yeah, from what we were told from the county and the individuals that work here and that live here all the time, is that the homes that have been affected that were burned are second homes. So they're not the primary homes of the individuals. So that is good. The folks that live there are solvent where their primary homes are. But it's devastating loss to have whatever property that you have still devastating there. So we were told that all those were secondary homes. What the area looks like is it still looks absolutely beautiful out there in the valley. It's a beautiful place. There's definitely going to see, when people get back into it, they're still going to see where the fire occurred, and you'll still see, some of those trees burn, the slopes burn, the area around there, the meadows, and where we see cattle grazing, and it's all still very green and very beautiful.
So I just have a follow-up question. You mentioned that it looks like, and maybe I misunderstood, but it looks like the fire has it moved past where the homes are? Are you feeling pretty comfortable that 13 is the number that it's going to stay at, or are homes still at risk?
It doesn't look like homes are still at risk. What they're doing is constantly monitoring that area to make sure they pretty much have line and have mopped up around the areas where the homes have burned. So they're just going to be patrolling that area and making sure that that line holds today. So they're expecting that to be all fine. We have favorable weather today and the next 2 days after this. So it's more favorable. I'll just say it's not the best. We have less winds like we had in the past. The winds were really driving the fire, making it much larger over the past few days, which is why they brought the incident management team in. It had the potential for getting very large. So yesterday, though, we were able to get up and air operations up, drop some retardant there behind the homes to keep that line secure.
Candy, can you tell our listeners, when we spoke Friday, we were told that the fire had been 0% contained, and we're still hearing that. What does that? I guess it's obvious what it means, but does that mean that there just aren't portions of it that have been stopped or blocked off, or that there are fire breaks and it's just going in every direction?
So the firefighters, when we're trying to get containment, if we say something is contained, we have ground truth that, and we know that line will hold. So we don't increase containment on a whim. We don't increase containment just because we've got line around it. We increase containment when we know that line will hold. So we're making sure that line is deep, that the fire has maybe already burned up to that line, or that we back burned in that area to make sure that it holds, or we've got enough retardant or water, it's enough wetting on that line to make sure it holds. We are 100% sure that now, this line will hold, and then we can increase containment. So even though the firefighters are out there working very hard to get the line around and get that secure, it takes a while to make sure that we can ground truth that and then start increasing containment.
How many firefighters do you have working this fire right now?
So the number that we have right now, it's a little tricky. It's 280, around over 280 personnel. We still have folks that are checking in today, so that number will increase later today as we have all our resources accounted for. So we'll have a better number with all the folks that have come in. The team just got in, yesterday, taking over the fire for the first time. So we had an increase in personnel and also had the local units still on the fire. Some of those local units have come off of the fire, letting the incident management team take over today. So we'll see a little bit of fluctuation in the personnel over the next few days, but guaranteed that we've got the crews, more air operations coming in today.
And it sounds, Candy, like with the increase in crews and the favorable weather that you've talked about, that you do feel like there's some optimism this week going into the containment and just the management of this fire.
Yeah, at least for the next 3 days with our favorable weather, the operations is trying to hit it really hard and take advantage of the more favorable weather.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Candy. We've been speaking with Candy Stevenson, the Public Information Officer from down around that fire.
Governor Cox held a press conference yesterday about the Forsyth fire and spoke about the impact of this to the community and the overall concern for more fires.
Them out, but this place is going to need a lot of attention and a lot of resources for a long time to come, and we're going to be right here to support them. I'm very concerned that we're going to have press conferences like this over the next couple of weeks in other places as well.
Yeah, and there's also another fire, the France Canyon fire near Bryce Canyon, not too far away, only 10% contained, but that has burned so far, Holly, 16,000 acres. But I guess because it didn't involve any homes, it's not getting quite the attention, but it's still really, really awful down there. Fire season has started. We've got good crews everywhere around the state taking care of that the best they can. Hopefully we'll have some good news this week on the Forsyth fire. When we come back after the break, we're going to be talking about U.S. airstrikes to 3 Iranian nuclear sites over the weekend, what we know so far, and have live analysis from a professor of law at the University of Utah who's calling us from Israel right after the break.
Discover the timeless value at Duke's Jewelers, a local treasure since 1948. Whether you're searching for a unique engagement ring or need expert watch repair, Duke's has been serving the community for over 75 years. It's the perfect time to visit and explore the wide selection of custom designs and quality gemstones. The skilled designers at Duke's can bring your dream piece to life, while experienced jewelers handle repairs and modifications in-house. Duke's Jewelers takes pride in value pricing, ensuring you receive the best prices every day. Need an appraisal? The Duke's Jewelers AGS certified gemologist is here to help. Whether it's hand or machine engraving, or redesigning old favorites into something new, get personalized service for every occasion. Visit Duke's Jewelers and experience the difference of locally operated expertise and dedication. Duke's Jewelers in Springfield, Utah. At Trio Senior Living, older adults aren't slowing down. They're just getting started. The Prime Fit Wellness program expands wellness beyond the gym into every aspect of community life. Whatever your goals, the team at Trio Senior Living has got your back, so you can put your best foot forward. Call 801-475-4004 today to schedule your personal visit.
This Friday, join KSL News Radio and NPS from 10 to 1 as the movie show stops by. Then, browse and uncover what makes NPS so great. With 4 locations, NPS takes a new inventory every day. Then, they check all competitors' retail pricing before marking items down 20 to 70% off. You're invited to visit the movie show this Friday from 10 to 1. And that's the first step to discovering NPS. Visit npsstore.com to begin your own NPS adventure. npsstore.com.
Hi, this is Derek Overstreet, president of the New Millennium Group and co-host of Stop Working, Start Living with KSL News Radio. Can you imagine what your life would be like if you could retire 3 to 5 years earlier than you thought possible? The things you could do, the loved ones you could spend time with, the memories that you could create. That's what our team at the New Millennium Group does. We'll walk you through the entire process every step of the way. If you'd like to get a copy of the 5-step proprietary plan that will help you retire 3 to 5 years sooner than you thought possible, give us a shout right now. 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370 or utahsfinancialplanner.com. Listen, most of our listeners right now have a tax problem, not a money problem. There's not enough money in Social Security Medicare as it is. Let us show you how you can significantly reduce your taxes. That's 888-999-6370. 888-999-6370 or utahsfinancialplanner.com.
Giving the gift of time during the holidays is a hallmark of the season, but the need for kind hearts and an extra pair of hands is here all year long. You Serve Utah is encouraging Utahns across the state to pledge now to serve those in need in the coming year. You and your family will help spread the holiday spirit long after the holidays have passed. When will you pledge? To sign up, visit www.userve.utah.gov.
Hey, get in. What? Who are you? I'm future you. Constipation with belly pain still coming back? Yeah. Mia, our doctor figured it out. She said it's irritable bowel syndrome with constipation, or IBS-C, and Linzess could help you get ahead of it.
Linzess linaclotide is a prescription medicine that treats IBS-C in adults. It's not a laxative. It's a once-daily pill that helps you get ahead of your symptoms. It's proven to help you have more frequent and complete bowel movements and helps relieve overall abdominal symptoms, belly pain, discomfort, and bloating. These symptoms were studied in combination, not individually. Do not give Linzess to children less than 2. It may harm them. Do not take Linzess if you have a bowel blockage. Get immediate help if you develop unusual or severe stomach pain, especially with bloody or black stools. The most common side effect is diarrhea, sometimes severe. If it's severe, stop taking Linzess and call your doctor right away. Other side effects include gas, stomach area pain, and swelling. Talk to your doctor and say yes to Linzess. Learn more at linzess.com or call 1-800-LINZESS.
People think saving money is hard, but really, it's easy. It's as simple as changing a few spending habits. For free tips on how to save the easy way, check out feedthepig.org. That's feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of CPAs and the Ad Council.
And expanded Inside Sources. Inside Sources.
We're getting a look now at some of the damage caused over the weekend by the United States getting involved in the Iranian problem, and the fact that we had decided to jump in and attack 3 Iranian nuclear sites. U.S. forces around the region and authorities at home on alert for potential retaliation from Iran, with Iran warning its military will decide the timing, nature, and scale of the response. Here's ABC News Chief Global Affairs anchor Martha Raddatz.
The operation carried out in complete secrecy, beginning at 12:01 a.m. Saturday morning. About a dozen B-2 bombers taking flight from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, around half of them heading west towards Guam, those with trackable movements. This was a decoy. Another 7, those with transponders turned off and minimal radio communications, launching a short time later, heading towards Iran.
I'll be honest, Holly, when we left Friday, just watching the president's response, sort of, I don't know if we're in, I don't know if we're out, I was surprised when I learned the U.S. had bombed. I really was.
I think that was probably the point, right?
Sure, right.
Right. In fact, that was one of the things I saw after the news did hit, that the strikes had hit, was that there were no leaks, and they were very proud of that.
Yeah. So what do we know about what's happened so far? It looked like there were 3 sites attacked. They seem to have been designated as nuclear sites. One was a place where they've got the centrifuges. One is a place where they've got the enriched uranium.
Right.
And we don't know about casualties or anything like that or the success of these. But the U.S. did drop those big bombs that they've been talking about.
Bunker buster bombs, right? They did bunker buster bombs to get down underneath the ground. And they also did Tomahawk missiles. About 30 of those, as I understand, were also launched at 2 of the sites. So when the reports first came out, the U.S. claimed that it was complete annihilation. And then as the weekend has gone on, they have said, well, it was severe damage, but we don't know the full extent. And they also don't know for sure where this enriched uranium actually is. And there's some speculation that the Iranians figured that something was getting hot and they moved it before the bombing actually took place. We don't know. I think some of that will unfold as we find out more information.
Right. We have with us this morning Amos Guiara, professor of law at S.J. Quinney College of Law at the University of Utah, who is currently in Israel. Professor, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for inviting me.
And what is it that what is the mood there? What are people experiencing? What are people feeling there in Israel today?
So, exactly 11 hours ago, we spent about 35 minutes in our safe rooms, whether in your house or in a public shelter, because unlike previous Iranian attacks, which were X number of missiles over a few minutes, the attack this morning was 35 minutes, less missiles. So it seems to be a new approach on their part. There were 3 cities that were hit. As far as we know, there were no casualties at all. But in terms of the U.S. attack on the Iranian 3 sites, as you correctly note, I think it's way too early to engage in the words that have been used, obliteration, annihilation, any of those other adjectives. I think your caution is spot on. I think it'll take a while to understand whether or not those 3 attacks were successful. If success is defined as utter obliteration, which I understand is the White House word, I would suggest exercising caution with such things. And you're also spot on in noting that I think commonly understood that the Iranians had removed the uranium from the most important site. To where they moved it and when they moved it, I don't know, but I think it's commonly understood that the uranium had been moved. Does that mean that the attack was successful or unsuccessful? I think the best approach is wait and see. And we here in Israel, as we're attacking Iran, as Iran is attacking us, and America is now involved, I think for anyone to jump to any conclusion beyond wait and see is, I think, fool's gold is the best expression. For us Israelis, we get the 10-minute warning siren, and then you get the actual siren. You do exactly as you are obligated to do, which is to go into the shelter and wait for the all clear. To assume that this is reaching an end. I see the reports. I as one who always exercises caution, recommends caution. I think that's the best approach at the moment.
So can I ask you, what is the general mood now that the U.S. has gotten involved? Is there, how are people feeling on the ground there?
I think, again, I understand the question. I think there are those who are pleased that the United States is involved. But again, because we're the ones who are getting attacked, right?
Right.
And I think that the common approach is again, not to repeat, but to wait and see if the Iranians will continue attacking, whether it's a significant number of rockets, missiles, or this new approach of limited number over the course of 35 minutes. I mean, 35 minutes in and out of a safe room or shelter, it's taking a toll on us, I think, and I know, emotionally, psychologically, for some people, financially. And again, with respect to the U.S. involvement, I'm sure the two of you know much more than I do. To what extent will the U.S. involvement be a one-off or be a consistent? And if the Iranians follow through on their threats to attack U.S. targets, whether military targets here in the Middle East or American targets outside of the Middle East, I think it's probably an open question how the United States government will react to that. Once you fire the first bullet, you fired the first bullet, but what happens thereafter is anybody's guess. And yes, I've seen that there's talk about regime change in Iran. I've been around the block. I think the two of you know I spent 20 years in the Israel Defense Forces in operational counterterrorism. I am a firm believer in caution and not a quick rush to judgment, because I think that's just the wrong approach here. And I think for Americans, the two of you are in Salt Lake City, I think at the moment, yes, the sites were hit. What happens next? Open question.
Yeah, but to follow up a little bit, Professor Giora, to what Holly just said, Israeli leadership certainly seemed enthused. Maybe that's not the right word, but supportive.
No, I think that's
of the U.S. involvement. That they were supportive 100%. Of that. Do the people of Israel feel like that was a good thing, or can you tell yet, or more of an invitation to greater conflict?
Excellent question. So Netanyahu and Trump have beyond complicated relationship, which we could discuss at length on another time. I don't think there's any doubt that Netanyahu and those who surround him are beyond pleased that the United States has joined. I think it's a little too early for public opinion polls here. It's Monday evening here. The attack happened, 36 hours ago. My instinct tells me that the public is, I don't know if the word is encouraged, that the United States is involved. But for all that, I remind you that we're still in and out of safe rooms. So even though the United States attacked the three sites, we, the general population, are not in any way all clear. And so even if there's, public support for American involvement, that in no way means that this war is over or close to being over. So yes, Netanyahu and his government clearly pleased. He even had a press conference yesterday in which he lauded the President of the United States of America, because I think for Netanyahu this was important. But this is not what's the expression. This is not game over. So even if the government is pleased, we, the public, who are suffering, I think it'll take a while for us, for you all to get a sense of how does the Israeli public view this. When three cities are hit, like three cities were hit this morning, with all due respect to the United States hitting the Iranian targets, there are people in those three cities who not only were in the safe room, fortunately they were in the safe room, that's what saved them, but there's significant property damage here. So you can have government being pleased with the U.S. government, yes, but that doesn't mean that the Israeli public is not taking a hit because of the Iranian bombing of us. Yeah. It didn't end 36 hours ago. I think that's the important point.
Yeah, it seems like it's just ramping up again. Professor Giora, thank you for joining us this morning from Israel. That's got to be.
Thank you so much for having me.
You bet. That's got to be a tough situation, a tough place to be. On the one hand, inviting the United States to participate and to help, and appreciating the fact that we do have weaponry that the Israelis don't have, that can be sort of these bunker busting bombs that can do some things that they don't have the capabilities to do that. On the other hand, is it an invitation? Is it a sort of an escalation of a conflict that can maybe only get worse? We're going to talk more about this conflict, and I want to talk, Holly, about the whole. A lot of people are saying, does the president have the right to do what he did?
Right.
And of course,
are we at war?
Or are we at war? We'll talk about that after the break.
9:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Andy Farnsworth. KSL's top story this hour. Fire crews are working to contain a wildfire in Washington County that's already destroyed more than a dozen homes. KSL News Radio's Adam Small has the latest on the Forsyth fire.
This fire is burning around Pine Valley, which is about 45 minutes north of St. George. So far, officials say 14 homes have been destroyed, as have 4 other outbuildings, though nobody has been hurt. And Governor Spencer Cox, who traveled to the area yesterday, says it's a miracle no other homes have been lost. Crews are now hoping to get a leg up on the fire, with temperatures expected to stay in the 70s today and tomorrow.
Crews believe the fire was started by lightning. So far, it's burned more than 5,600 acres and is 0% contained. A fire burning near Bryce Canyon grew over the last 24 hours from just shy of 16,000 to just over 23,000 acres. The France Canyon fire is about 10% contained. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. No comments so far from Iranian leaders after the Trump administration announced strikes on nuclear sites over the weekend. ABC's Ian Pannell is in Tel Aviv and says there's been no change in the violence.
Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who's the supreme leader of Iran, finally appearing, at least online, posting on X that Israel would be punished for what happened, but he didn't even make mention of the United States. We have seen repeated Iranian missile strikes here in Israel, many of them landing here in Tel Aviv.
Iran says it moved most of the materials in question out of the way before the U.S. strikes. Your money at this moment, the Dow is up 69 points to 42,277. Coming up, it's a little bit cooler today, leaving leftovers from the weekend, but then it starts a vertical warmth growth over the week. We'll check weather next. KSL News Time 9:31.
Mornings are for recharging.
And they're for starting your day right.
We volunteer to join you in the car. Get news and weather at 102.7 FM during the most important part of your day.
Andy and Amanda, each morning between 5 and 9 on KSL News Radio.
Life can feel hard or overwhelming sometimes, but you don't have to face things alone. Getting help for yourself or someone you're worried about starts with a call or text to 988. Where you always have someone to talk to, someone to help you, and somewhere safe to go. 988 Utah is here for anyone experiencing mental health challenges or emotional distress. 988 Utah can even help you navigate how to support your struggling loved ones. Whether you're struggling with anxiety, depression, or suicidal thoughts, trained professionals are ready to listen and provide free, confidential support 24/7. Utah, don't hesitate to call or text 988 for you or someone you care about. The caring staff at 988 Utah can connect you to the right resources. Learn more at 988.utah.gov.
Be advised, this is your opportunity to save up to 40 to 80% on a hot tub or swim spa. This weekend only, Friday through Sunday, Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Be advised, this is your opportunity to save up to 40 to 80% on a hot tub or swim spa. This weekend only, Friday through Sunday, Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. 18-month interest-free financing. Our factories have demanded we sell 1,000 hot tubs and swim spas this weekend. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Huge factory incentives, factory rebates, this weekend only. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. We can remove your old hot tub. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Hot tub starting at $2,999. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Just relax and enjoy. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Friday, 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. Saturday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sunday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Free admission, free parking, free delivery. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Call 833-SPA-SALE or visit hottubandSwimSpaSale.com.
With Progressive, renters can save on protection for the things that make your place yours, even things that don't make sense to everyone.
People always wonder why I don't get rid of my guitar since I never play. But it's like, what if I actually end up taking lessons? Sure, I've had it for 8 years, but if I get rid of it, then what will my New Year's resolution be next January?
Exactly. So bundle your renters in auto and save with Progressive and protect the things that make sense to you. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates and other insurers not available in all states or situations. Covered subject to policy terms and conditions.
Get in the zone, AutoZone.
Jane has 150,000 miles on her truck. And she's proud of that. Jane's secret? AutoZone, where friendly AutoZoners help her find the right parts. Jane's brother Josh only cares that his car starts and goes. But when it doesn't, he also goes to AutoZone, where friendly AutoZoners help with free services. No hassles, just help. Everything you need, nothing you don't.
Get in the zone, AutoZone.
Restrictions apply.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Mountain America's Double Rewards credit card promotion. Here's Heather Kelly.
Where you're going to have delays southbound I-15 through most of Kaysville. It's actually due to the construction happening right around Shepherd Lane in Farmington, but it's backing everybody up into the Kaysville area. That's the only slowdown I see on the major freeways. We do have a crash on Hillfield Road. This is southbound just as you go away from the gate of Hill Air Force Base. It's over on the right shoulder. Whether you park it, stripe it, or pave it, GoPave Utah has your blacktop covered at GoPaveUtah.com. That's GoPaveUtah.com. Call or visit GoPaveUtah.com. Heather Kelly in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather now. We're not even going to get up to 80 degrees today in Salt Lake, only a high of 78, but then we will slowly warm up till we hit 96 degrees on Friday and a high of 97 on Saturday. Right now it's cloudy and 57 degrees in Salt Lake City. I'm Andy Farnsworth from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at KSLNewsRadio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
The all-new Inside Sources. Inside Sources. Your inside access to the people and policies shaping Utah's future. Here are Greg Skordas and Holly Richardson on KSL News Radio.
So we're still following the latest developments after the United States attacked or bombed nuclear sites in Iran over the weekend. And, one of the things that was really interesting to me when we just visited with our last guest, Professor Giora, who's in Israel right now, is that he said that they're at war, right? I mean, so on the ground there, they feel like they're at war. And I know one of the conversations that's been happening over the weekend is, can the president do this? Is this a declaration of war? And, you're the legal expert. Are we at war in the United States?
Well, certainly Israel and Iran are at war. And whether the United States is or not remains to be seen. And I think there are so many facets to this. So you're right. The Constitution of the United States specifically has what we call the Wars Power Act. It's in Article 1, which is the article that deals with the legislature.
Right.
And it says that the legislature, Congress, has the power to declare war and to make rules concerning captives on land and water. So Congress has the power to declare war. Having said that, Holly, the last time Congress declared war was in 1942.
That would be World War II.
That would be World War II, and I was assuming that would have been shortly after Pearl Harbor was bombed or thereabouts. So the Constitution does provide that Congress has that power and the President doesn't. However, the President is defined under Article 3. The President is the commander-in-chief of the military, and so he runs the military. So on the one hand, Congress can tell him what to do, but he's the one that is in charge of the military. So then, we've sort of evolved over the years because certainly since 1942, we've had Korea,
multiple conflicts,
we've had Vietnam, which
yep.
we would call full-scale wars.
Right.
Other conflicts, that are numerous all
right.
over the place. And
Desert Storm.
Right, exactly. So Congress did pass what they call the Wars Power Resolution in 1973. That was a long, long time ago. And they said this in that resolution, that the president must consult with Congress before introducing United States armed forces into hostilities or into a situation where imminent involvement and hostilities is clearly indicated by the circumstances. Did the president consult with Congress in this situation? There's no reason to think that he did.
We know that he did not, right?
Right.
At least not with any Democrats.
So the president is saying that he's using this a provision that says if there's imminent threat, that is, I don't have time to consult Congress. It wouldn't make sense to get 435
right.
representatives and 100 senators together on the same page, debate it, have hearings, that type of thing. I had to act quickly because the Iranian nuclear threat was at such a point, especially with the conflict between Israel and Iran, that if Iran's ever going to drop a bomb, it was about to happen, and he felt like somebody needed to do something to stop that. And so he acted under his executive authority, which he has done a lot in his first
that's true.
150 days with these executive orders, and said, I don't have time to run this by Congress. Here's what I'm going to do. And that's exactly what he did so far.
So we also have, let me ask you this question. We also have other instances where, for example, under President Obama, I know that they were tracking Osama bin Laden and engaged military there to basically take out bin Laden. My understanding is the president also has the ability, not just if it's an emergency, but if it's a limited a limited strike, if you will. Do you think that's accurate?
Oh, I think whether it's accurate or not, it's certainly been done. It's certainly been done numerous times. And we could go back. I mean, even as recently as March, when the U.S. military bombed the Houthi rebels' hideouts in Yemen, and Pete Hegseth said, "Well, I didn't have any choice." And people are like, "That's an act of war. You're supposed to consult. And you certainly shouldn't put it on your chat." but
signal chat.
But no, it happened, and I think that so. I'm not trying to defend one side or the other, but there's a lot of talk in Congress right now. Should he have done this? I mean, the Democrats are saying he should be impeached. Of course, that's never going to happen in a situation like this. But to answer your question, if this is in fact a one-off, if it is in fact the U.S. saying, okay, we're in to help you out, Israel, we're going to take care of these nuclear sites. Now you've got to finish the deal, or let's try to work something out. I don't think there's going to be a tremendous backlash.
Yeah.
But if the U.S. continues to be involved, Congress is going to step in and say, okay, we're going to decide what that level of involvement looks like. But again, if this is just something that happened one day and the U.S. has backed out, which it appears so far to be the case.
It's been 36 hours.
Right, but it hasn't been too long, then I suppose there won't be tremendous backlash for it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, again, one of the things that I've seen is that you have some Democrats, you at least have Senator John Fetterman, who says this is a good thing, but you also have a split within the Republicans, right? So people who've been really strong Trump supporters are saying this is not okay. And I'm speaking specifically of Marjorie Taylor Greene. This is like one of the things that President Trump campaigned on when he was candidate Trump was that he would start no new wars, right? So I guess technically if this isn't a war, he didn't start one, right? But he's been involved in, I think it's fair to say, an escalation in the Middle East. And then is there an argument to be made that you don't have to declare a war for it to be a war?
Yes, certainly that's the case. And to follow Marjorie Taylor Greene's line of thought, Trump not only said he wouldn't get involved in new wars, but what he called the endless wars in the Middle East have to stop. And this seems to be the precursor of one of those. I mean, I don't know where this is going to go, and I'm surprised at the number of Republicans who are concerned about what he did. But I can understand if you're in Congress saying, "Wait a minute, you could have at least consulted some of our leaders,"
right?
Especially because the U.S. involvement in this wasn't like the Houthi rebels in Yemen, drop a couple bombs in. So where do you think their developments are? This was a fairly large-scale operation that involved, I don't know how many of those 30-ton bombs, but several of them. I mean,
at least 6 I saw.
That we may be the only country in the world that even has those. And what they're trying to do, Holly, is get to these centrifuges and the operations that the Iranians have something like 300 feet below ground, and these are missiles that can actually penetrate something like that. I mean, I can't even understand the physics of that.
They have to be really precise, right? It's almost like Star Wars. You've got to drop it down the shaft just right. So they create one, and then they have to keep following. And it looks like they have at least 3 points of impact in a couple of spots. So at least 6 of these bunker buster bombs. But yeah, I mean, Israel today is following up at attacking those same sites that the U.S. hit over the weekend.
So then let's have another follow-up. Iran has indicated that it's going to attack U.S. military sites in the region. Some of those are actually closer to Iranian targets than Israel itself. If Iran attacks U.S. military sites, then do we go to Congress and say, okay, guys, let's declare war here? Or
I think
what's
there's
it going
an argument
to take?
for that. Yeah, I think there's an argument for that, especially once U.S. lives are lost, right? I think for a lot of people that can be the tipping point. Although, to your point, Vietnam and Korea, we never officially declared war, and we lost a lot of people during those.
You're right.
Conflicts.
Maybe once U.S. troops are hurt, U.S. citizens are part of the conflict, that we take a different look at this.
All right, coming up, Arturo Gamboa was jailed after a fatal shooting at the No Kings rally. He was released on Friday with no charges filed. We're going to talk with his attorney coming up.
Alpine Home Medical, we bring wellness home.
Hey folks, it's Jay Broadbent here with Alpine Home Medical, celebrating 28 years of keeping Utah and Idaho comfortable and at home. Back in '97, I started with a truck, a dream, and a lot more hair. Today, we've got 11 stores from Idaho Falls to St. George. From the moment you step into our clean, welcoming showrooms, you'll feel the Alpine difference. Our team will be there to listen and guide you to the best solutions for your needs. We believe that the right equipment can transform lives. We're honored to be a part of your healthcare journey and to help you live the life you deserve. Visit us online at alpinehomemedical.com. That's alpinehomemedical.com.
Alpine Home Medical, we bring wellness home.
You trust us for news and information in your car. Now trust us at home. KSL News Radio has you covered, keeping you informed on the latest breaking news, weather, traffic, sports, and more. Listen on your Amazon Echo or Google Home device. Just say, Alexa, open KSL News Radio. Or listen on the KSL News Radio Listen app. Text the word app to 57500. KSL News Radio. We have you covered.
Have you seen those billboards that have a giant turtle on them that say, win a new air conditioner? What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and you're probably wondering, what's that all about? Well, the turtle is a character in our new TV commercials that'll be airing this summer. I know it's kind of silly, but we're always trying to figure out how to grab attention and stand out in a crowded market. We thought a big turtle would do the trick. Another thing we're doing is every week this summer, Any Hour is giving away an air conditioner to one lucky customer. We're calling it the Coolest Summer Sweepstakes. Here's how it works. This summer, if you get an estimate to replace your air conditioner or purchase a new air conditioner from Any Hour Services, you'll automatically be entered into our weekly drawing. If your name is drawn, Any Hour will pay for your air conditioner, up to $8,750. We just want to meet more homeowners that are in the market for a new air conditioner and have the chance to earn their business. We're confident that once you have an Any Hour technician in your home, you'll see why we have over 28,000 Google reviews. No purchase is necessary. See official rules at anyhour.com.
Hey, it's Mike Rohn. If I have a choice, I like to do business with companies that actually stand for something. That's why I switched from Verizon to Pure Talk. No offense to Verizon, I'm sure they stand for something. I just don't know what it is. Pure Talk, on the other hand, is a veteran-owned company that supports our military in a big way, and I appreciate that. Yeah, I also appreciate unlimited talk and text and plenty of data for half the cost of the big guys, and I do like being on America's most dependable 5G network for just $20 a month, but what I really appreciate is no contract, no cancellation fees, and Pure Talk's commitment to handle all their customer service in this country. I saw it for myself. I went to Georgia, I got a tour of their headquarters, I met their CEO, and I talked to the same customer service folks that you'll talk to when you dial pound 250 and say keyword Mike Rowe. Switch today and save 50% off your first month when you dial pound 250 and say keyword Mike Rowe. Pure Talk, a wireless company that actually stands for something.
I'm Andrew Saul, Commissioner of Social Security. I'm here to warn you about telephone scammers pretending to be government employees. Some of these scammers may say threatening things like you will be arrested if you don't make payments or provide personal information. Do not fall for these tricks. These calls are not from us. Real Social Security employees will never threaten you for information or money. If you receive a call like this, hang up. Never give the caller your personal information, like your Social Security number or bank account, or send money in any form, cash, gift cards, wire transfers, or prepaid debit cards. Report the call to our law enforcement arm, the Office of the Inspector General, at oig.ssa.gov. Share this information with your friends and family.
Email from school about the incident today.
Scary.
You know, teachers like me, parents, we don't always know as much as you guys do about what's going on with other kids.
Half the time, it's rumors.
Yeah, but if you're ever concerned about a friend who's having trouble with alcohol, prescription drugs, anything, you need to tell an adult, someone you know and trust. That can be hard, but speaking up about a problem is what helping a friend is all about.
For more information, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
The new Inside Sources.
So we've been talking all week last week about the shooting that unfortunately killed Afa Alu, an innocent bystander at the No Kings rally that was held just over a week ago. And we know that things have the initial story kind of changed, right? At first, it was we arrested the gunman, and then it was, well, he actually didn't fire a shot. It was a peacekeeper who did. The peacekeeper has not been detained or charged with anything, but Arturo Gamboa was held in jail for 72 hours, but that didn't count for the weekend or the holiday, and then that was just extended. But on Friday, news broke that he was released, and we are joined in studio by his attorney, who happens to be my co-host.
Yeah, I know this is a little awkward, and I appreciate the introduction. And so I'm obviously biased, and I'm involved in the case, and I need to disclose that. Arturo Gamboa was released Friday afternoon from the Salt Lake County Jail, pursuant to a motion that we filed. In the federal court, you'd call it a writ of habeas corpus. In the state court, we call it a petition for extraordinary relief. But it's basically get him out of jail. And so you outlined the facts very well. And again, I don't want to reiterate too much because I'm trying to be as objective as possible, but just state the facts. There was a shooting that occurred at the Three Kings, the Kings No Kings rally. A peacekeeper shot at Arturo.
Right.
And this is all part of the public record, so I don't feel uncomfortable discussing it at all. And shot Arturo, but also shot off Alu and killed him. And so Arturo was arrested, taken into custody by Salt Lake City Police Department and booked into jail, and that's a specific term that I want to describe in a minute, on suspicion of murder. And the probable cause statement said that he was a suspect in a murder and that he created a grave risk of death to others by his conduct and therefore caused the death of another person. I took issue with that right at the beginning because I think a lot of people felt like, well, what about the real shooter? And people sort of thought Arturo was the shooter. And
at the beginning, yeah, for sure.
Right. And again, it's clear that he wasn't the shooter. And in fact, Salt Lake City police have confirmed what we know, which was that his gun wasn't even loaded, so he couldn't have been the shooter. Did he brandish the weapon? There are certainly different takes on that. Most people would say he just had it pointed at the ground. Utah's funny, Holly. We have this open carry law,
right?
Which people in a lot of other states are going, well, you have this march, you have this rally, and people are just walking around carrying AR-15s.
And the answer is yes, they can be.
The answer is yes. Is it a good idea? Absolutely not. But yes, that's exactly what happened here. And so he was taken into custody Saturday night, first hospitalized for a minute because he was shot in the back, taken to the jail on Sunday. And you're right. There's a rule that says you got to deal with him like 48, 72 hours.
And by deal with, you mean charge him with something or let him go, right?
Right, because the DA's office hadn't weighed in at all.
Yeah.
It was just a probable cause statement filed by a police officer. There was no case.
Right.
There was no bail.
Right.
There was no court hearing.
Right.
No judge had even seen him. And so what is 72 hours? Saturday doesn't count. Sunday doesn't count. Monday was a state holiday.
Right.
And Thursday was a federal holiday.
Right.
So this clock was running really slow. And so when the district attorney's office filed this motion on Thursday saying, hey, we need more time, could we go until Monday at 5? We finally just said, that's enough.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, because by then he will have been in jail for 10 days on a 48-hour hold.
Wow.
And so, yeah, we pulled the trigger. We filed the motion. The district attorney's office, we went back and forth on it, but we met with a judge on Friday afternoon, and the judge ordered his release. He was released under certain conditions, not the least of which is he lived with his father, that he stay in the Salt Lake County area, that he maintain contact with what we call pretrial services, an agency that works for Salt Lake County, not possess firearms, and then surrender his passport so he doesn't leave the country.
Right.
He didn't have to post bail or anything like that. But another thing that I think is important to know is that the district attorney's office has said that they are continuing to investigate. Now, I don't know whether that means continuing to investigate Arturo or continuing to investigate the peacekeeper, because as this has evolved, more and more attention is placed on the peacekeeper and what his involvement was. And this group called 50501, which organized it, you know, and to what extent did they organize and encourage and bring in these, quote, peacekeepers?
We've talked about it all week last week, and so we know that 5051, the Utah branch, has now been disassociated from the national branch because the national organization said we have a strict no weapons policy, right? And clearly these peacekeepers were here, I think, I mean, at least the statements we've seen so far at the behest of 5051 asked them to come. When they first said yes, they were peacekeepers here. They're former military veterans, and they have experience. They have experience in de-escalation training. But one of the other things that I think is interesting as well is I understand from Clark Aposhian, who is a really big gun advocate in the state of Utah, you actually have to be licensed specifically to carry a weapon as a peacekeeper.
Right. If you're going to provide security for an event, you can't just show up with your gun. You have to. The event organizers have to file a petition with the city or the municipality that's holding the event and say, okay, these people are carrying weapons, and they'll.
And I think we don't know that answer, right?
Right. We don't know whether that occurred. Yeah. I think we can assume that it probably didn't, or we probably would have heard about that. 5051 has now. I mean, you talk about these peacekeepers and what they were. From the video that we've seen, there were a group of men, I don't know the gender necessarily, that were wearing these yellow jackets with these vests on, and some of them were obviously carrying sidearms. I would say this because we talked to Salt Lake City Police last week. Mm-hmm. They had a presence there.
Yeah,
Salt Lake City Police had a big presence there, and there were police officers everywhere. And so there wasn't a need. I think anyone would agree there really wasn't a need for another peacekeeping force, a group that were armed. What would have made sense, and again, I'm playing Monday morning quarterback here, would be to arm them with radios and allow them communicate with direct access to police and say, hey, there's a situation going on here, because police were there. Police were close by no matter what was happening. So I think they could have served a mission. I think they could have served something valuable, just another set of eyes for the police department, eyes and ears on the scene. And I think that's what 5051 was saying. Hey, we sponsor these. We do these. We put these on. Sponsor is not the right word. Organize them.
Yeah.
And we have groups there, peacekeepers, but they're not armed peacekeepers, because it was clear that the individual was armed. Now, when the district attorney's office is continuing to investigate, I don't know whether and to what extent they're investigating the peacekeeper for his involvement in this.
So what is the process now for Arturo? So he's been released. He has no charges filed against him, but he does have some conditions placed on his release. What do you anticipate happens?
Yeah, so the district attorney's office is continuing to investigate Holly. They're sitting down with the police department. I know they had a formal screening last Friday to decide what, if any, charges would be filed. I think that was Friday afternoon. They didn't come to a conclusion. They agreed to release him. Will they continue that? I mean, they've said, hey, there are 10,000 people there. I can't imagine they're going to try to do 10,000 interviews.
Well, you can't even find them all.
even 100 interviews. But, I think that whatever the city decides to do, and obviously I have my idea what they should do, whatever the DAs should do, they'll probably do it here in the next week or two. There's no reason to let everybody sort of sit out there hanging in the wind. And I would say that is true both for Arturo Gamboa and for the peacekeeper, so that the public knows, and Afa Alu's family knows.
Right, exactly.
Who is going to be held accountable for this, for anyone.
Yeah.
I think there's a chance that the district attorney's office doesn't file any charges against anyone, or they could file charges against both of these individuals.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would say both of those, just from my own experience as an attorney, would be wrong decisions. But I'm not involved in that, and I am involved. I'm in communication with the DA's office, but ultimately they're the ones that will decide what happens, and we will stand by and cooperate with them, whatever they choose to do.
So I think that incident, right? We saw then the next day we had a shooting at Westfest, and now that teenager has been charged with 4 counts of, I think, aggravated murder.
Yes.
Because one of the victims was also pregnant, and so that was the 4th count. And then I saw just last night at another city event, there was another teenager who was armed, and they were able, the police were able to arrest him before he shot anyone. But
a lot of discussion about guns right now in Utah. Do we have too much liberality with respect to guns? Should we dial it back? We don't know, but that's certainly something that's going to be discussed a lot in the future. When we come back, we'll see how Americans feel about rich.
Money.
Who is rich?
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
10 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Andy Farnsworth. KSL's top story this hour: the body of a man who went missing yesterday evening on Utah Lake has been found. KSL News Radio's Brianna Willis reports.
The man had been on a wave runner with his cousin near the Linden Marina when they both fell off. A passing boat picked up the cousin, but the Utah County Sheriff's Office says it was around 1 a.m. before they found the missing man's body. Deputies say the wind played a factor and the water was choppy. We don't know if either of the men had been wearing life jackets.
We also don't know the name of the man yet. He was 23 years old. Our top national story this hour from ABC News: Iran is now threatening to block the Strait of Hormuz, a critical shipping channel for the U.S. oil supply. That's after the United States bombed nuclear sites in Iran over the weekend. ABC's Mary Bruce at the White House.
There's still a lot of questions over how much damage was actually done to Iran's nuclear program, right? The president came out on Saturday night and said that these key enrichment facilities had been completely and totally obliterated, in his words. But the vice president wasn't going that far yesterday when he came out to defend and tout the president's move. He said instead that Iran's nuclear program was substantially set back.
We'll have more coming up on Midday with Maria Chaleos. Your money at this moment: the Dow up just slightly, 8 points to 42,215. Coming up, pleasant today before another warm-up. KSL weather is next. KSL News Time, 10:01.
A reminder about the simplest way to get updated for your day.
Hit your KSL preset when you jump in the car, and we'll take care of the rest.
Hear key news updates and traffic reports.
Andy and Amanda from 5 to 9 in your car.
KSL News Radio at 102.7 FM.
Why'd I go to the doctor? My heart would race just taking my son to practice. It didn't feel right. So I got checked out. Turns out I have atrial fibrillation, which increases the risk of stroke about 5 times.
Symptoms like irregular heartbeat, heart racing, chest pain, shortness of breath, fatigue, or lightheadedness can come and go. But if it's AFib, the risk of stroke remains. If you have symptoms, contact a doctor.
I'm so glad I did.
Visit notimetowait.com. Sponsored by Bristol-Myers Squibb and Pfizer.
Offer not valid in all states or where prohibited by law. Loans are subject to lender approval. See website for details.
Honey, the credit card bill came, and we're maxed out.
Maxed out cards, rent is due. We just need some extra cash to help us get by.
Maybe we should go to 27cash.com.
With our bad credit?
27cash.com is one of the largest personal loan networks. They can help people with any type of credit get up to $5,000, and cash can hit our bank account as soon as tomorrow.
When you need extra cash, go to 27cash.com. That's 27cash.com. 27cash.com.
Be advised, this is your opportunity to save up to 40 to 80% on a hot tub or swim spa. This weekend only, Friday through Sunday, Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Be advised, this is your opportunity to save up to 40 to 80% on a hot tub or swim spa. This weekend only, Friday through Sunday, Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. 18-month interest-free financing. Our factories have demanded we sell 1,000 hot tubs and swim spas this weekend. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Huge factory incentives, factory rebates, this weekend only. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. We can remove your old hot tub. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Hot tub starting at $2,999. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Just relax and enjoy. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Friday, 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. Saturday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sunday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Free admission, free parking, free delivery. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Call 833-SPA-SALE or visit hottubandSwimSpaSale.com.
Matthew.
Huh? Oh, sorry.
It's okay. I just need you to listen to me.
I know that a lot of times, Mom, it might not seem like I'm listening to you, but I am. I hear you. And what you say really does matter to me.
I mean, let's be honest. No kid likes rules, but I get why we have them. I hear you, and I know it's because you care.
All the talks we've had over the years, including what you've told me about not using alcohol and other drugs, they stick with me. And believe it or not, they really do make a difference, especially at times that matter most.
Hey, want a drink?
No thanks, I'm good. So thank you, Dad, for talking and preparing me for what's ahead.
Thanks, Mom, for never giving up and always being my biggest fan.
Thank you for letting me know what you expect, so I can try to meet your expectations.
Thank you for talking.
For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs,
Visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Mountain America's Double Rewards credit card promotion. Here's Heather Kelly.
We've got delays southbound I-15 through most of Kaysville due to construction around Shepherd Lane in Farmington. So that's going to add about 5 extra minutes to your commute. But then once you get into the Salt Lake Valley, southbound I-15 is stop and go from 90th South in Sandy down to 106 South. That is due to a crash blocking the HOV lane and the left shoulder. But once you get past all that, speeds improve heading into Utah County. Garden City, Utah in beautiful Bear Lake presents Little Texas on July 5th at Garden City Heritage Park. Games, live music, and a fireworks show all free. Visit bearlake.org for details. Heather Kelly in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather will stay in the 70s today with a high of 78 degrees, but then we start a week-long warm-up. 84 Tuesday, 88 on Wednesday. Right now it's 57 degrees and cloudy in Salt Lake City. I'm Andy Farnsworth from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
The all-new Inside Sources. Inside Sources. Your inside access to the people and policies shaping Utah's future. Here are Greg Skordas and Holly Richardson on KSL News Radio.
Okay, Holly, I've got to share some numbers with you this morning that we've got from Bankrate, and we're going to talk to someone from Bankrate with us later. But almost half of Americans, 45%, say that they need to make $100,000 or more per year to live comfortably. That's 45%. 26% say that you need to make $150,000 or more to live comfortably. 16% say it's got to be $200,000, and 8% say $500,000. Now, that's pretty. I guess comfortable has a different term to different people.
Yeah, right, for sure. You know, one of the things that's interesting to me, and that I also want to talk about is that's live comfortably, but that's not rich, right? And so, what's the number to be rich? That's like $1 million a year, right? 1 in 4 say they have to have $1 million a year to live to feel rich.
Yeah, I mean,
but I think it's relative, right? Because I remember reading, it's been a while ago, but that the average American said they needed to make 30% more than what they were currently making to be able to be comfortable, right? That so many Americans feel like they're, just getting by, and there's financial stress and this new study with Bankrate, we actually have an analyst on the line. It's Sarah Foster, who can talk to us more about this new release. Thanks for joining us, Sarah.
Hey.
So, quick question: can you just give us what were your key takeaways from this report that you just released?
Yeah, I think there is some level here of Americans just increasingly feeling priced out of America. That was really evident in the data that we collected when we found that more Americans this year than last year feel that they are not completely financially secure. The amount of Americans who say they are completely financially secure has declined steadily since 2023 when we began polling. And there's also a rising share of Americans who are losing hope of never having complete financial security. And one part of that could be just that they don't feel like they're making enough money to even get there. 56% of people told us that they want to make more than they already are to live comfortably.
Yeah, Sarah, I was going to ask you about that. So it seems that people are feeling more today than years in the past that they're not financially secure. What do you suppose is behind that? Because it seems like jobs growth is great. It seems like wages are good. We got a handle on interest rates. We got a handle on inflation. But more Americans are feeling insecure financially than they have in the past.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. There is this instance right now happening where the data is looking like everything's great on paper, but then when you look underneath the surface and you speak with Americans, many of them are feeling like they just don't have enough money to make ends meet, that they're living paycheck to paycheck, that everything is going toward a bill and not toward a goal, and income is not translating to wealth. I think it definitely starts with the pandemic, and Americans never actually caught up to the surge in inflation. We have separate data that shows that their wage growth just didn't keep pace. It's catching back up right now, but there is still that gap. And then I think another part of it really begins long before the pandemic, where this idea of a single breadwinner being able to sustain a family, car in the driveway, home in your name, that vision is almost kind of a relic of a bygone era. And I think Americans are feeling increasingly priced out of America. We saw that even back in data from 2019, that fewer than 2 in 5 Americans would pay a $1,000 emergency expense with their savings. So a lot of us think that the fragility began during the pandemic, but it was actually going on long before that.
So you mentioned a couple of things. Is this a generational thing? Are we looking at young people in their 20s and 30s who have this expectation, or is it broader than just our young adults right now?
It's actually the Gen Xers who are that generation to watch. And for the past 3 years, they are the ones who feel like they are not completely financially secure. Many of them are losing hope about the idea of being financially secure. Baby boomers are a little bit older. They probably make a little bit more money now. They might feel like their life is at least a little bit more financially stable because the older you are, the more time you've had to really build up those good habits. But millennials, Gen Zers, a lot of that can just be blamed for how early they are in their careers. But it's really always interesting to me that it's Gen Xers who are the ones who have just completely given up hope, and they're the ones feeling, that pinch more than maybe the millennials, who probably capture a lot of the attention when we talk about people who are left behind by the economy.
Sarah, what do you think is driving this insecurity, this increased insecurity, and not necessarily just with Gen Xers, but with everyone, given what's going on and given the state of the economy? Is there some concern about, we see tariffs and things going back and forth, and housing prices have gone through the roof. There's certainly a lot going on, but is there a factor or something that's driving this insecurity more than others?
Yeah, I don't think we can really attribute it to one cause. Something that is always interesting to me is that we do kind of see expectations for the income that Americans feel like they need to live comfortably. They kind of rise and fall along with inflation expectations. So if someone is thinking that prices are going to go up, then they're probably going to expect that they need to make even more. But if inflation is expected to just kind of be low and stable, they're not really expecting that they need a drastically more than they're already making to live comfortably. Of course, tariffs have been in the news. Inflation has really just been front and center for many Americans over the past few years. And that could probably be blamed for why many Americans feel like they need more, or maybe they're losing hope. But the data has really yet to prove, just where prices are going to increase because of tariffs. So whether when the rubber meets the road, whether expectations actually end up meeting reality, that's a different story. But it will certainly be interesting to watch. And if prices do go up as much as some economists are expecting, it could probably, have a role in making many Americans just feel even worse.
One final question. Do you think that if the people who felt like they needed to make $150,000 a year or more to live comfortably, if they actually had that income, do you think it actually would solve the problems?
It's a really good question. I see time and time again, just in my role talking with everyday people, that sometimes it's really the lower income Americans, someone who's just so used to budgeting well, allocating every single dollar toward a bill, toward a goal. They're the ones, it's not always that those high salary, high earners are the ones who have, the best lay of the land over their finances. And we saw that in the data, that the strongest relationship between your expectation of how much you need to live comfortably was income. So the more money you make, the more money you expect to make. And I think it is very fair to say that as soon as we make those next maybe $5,000, maybe $10,000, we're always chasing that next 15 or the 20. Like we're stuck on a treadmill a little bit.
Right.
Exactly right. Sarah Foster, analyst with Bankrate. I would say this, Holly. There would also be a discussion in terms of regions. $100,000 in rural parts of the country
goes a lot farther
a
than
fairly decent income. But if you're living in a high-rise apartment in San Francisco or
That's
New York,
right.
maybe
So
not so
nothing.
much. So, I know that, my wife works for the federal government, and their federal employees are paid sort of the same. So a person in Utah makes X, and a person in
Washington, D.C.
Washington, D.C. makes X for doing the same work. It goes a lot further in Utah than it does in other places. But I still think, $200,000 a year to be comfortable is pretty comfortable.
Seems generous.
Yes, seems very comfortable. When we come back, our next guest is going to tell us why we shouldn't necessarily cry for Iran's regime, but we should be concerned about what's coming up next. Stay tuned.
I am not a rich woman, but I feel like a rich woman every time I go in my closet. The best, hands down, present I've ever received was my husband secretly redid my closet with Closets by Design. So now when I go in there aren't all these shoes just junked on the floor. They're neatly sitting on their shelves. And my necklaces are hanging on their individual hooks, and earrings are in their little squares in this soft drawer that pulls out. It's just gorgeous. In fact, he saw how much I loved it. He had Closets by Design redo the garage. So now all the stuff, the tools, the toys, the junk is all in cabinets. When you open our garage door, you see cars. That's it. It's amazing. The things that Closets by Design can do, and it's going to save you money right now because you get up to 40% off plus an additional 15% off with 18-month financing. You can do so much with your closet, much more than you realize, with this wonderful Utah company, Closets by Design. Find out more at 1-800-BY-DESIGN or closetsbydesign.com.
Market volatility isn't slowing down. If you're nearing retirement, now is not the time to wait and see. Every day of uncertainty can put your future at risk. It's time to diversify. I'm Jeff Jr. with Trajan Wealth, and I want you to know you can create certainty, locking in guaranteed income for life. This means predictable, stable cash flow, even in turbulent times. You've worked too hard to leave your retirement to chance. Right now, there are options to receive up to 30% upfront or annual growth of up to 10% for retirement income. That's up to $30,000 upfront or up to $10,000 per year on $100,000, all guaranteed for retirement income. Don't wait. Call Trajan today at 801-899-7600. 801-899-7600.
Annuity guarantees are based on the claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company. Any examples provided are hypothetical. Annuities are issued with prospectus and sales brochures and should be reviewed carefully before funding as features and benefits vary. DBA in most states as Trajan Wealth Insurance Solutions.
When might you be buzzed? When you suddenly love everything.
You guys! I love this song! I love these nachos. I love our kickball league. Ugh! I love this guy. What's your name? You know what I'd love? A ride when it's time to head out.
If you see a buzzed warning sign, call for a ride when it's time to go home. Buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
I love your car. Is this real leather?
Febreze. As a rideshare driver, I love keeping my car smelling fresh and clean. So when I'm driving, I only trust Febreze car vent clips, featuring 3 distinct intensity settings, because it's that little touch that sets me apart. I can turn the intensity down for subtle freshness, or I can turn it up for when I want lots of scent. So whether it's set to low, medium, or high, with Febreze car, I know my car's going to smell amazing. Which keeps my driver rating right where it belongs. Picking up, Oscar!
Getting help with electrical repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
If you're talking, they will hear you.
We all want our kids to grow up safe and healthy, so we show them how. And we tell them with honest conversations that let them know what we expect. Not just one time, but every chance we get. That's especially important when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. Kids not only need to know the dangers and how to avoid them, they need to hear it often from you. And when it comes to pain medications, opioids, they need to know that they should never be taken without a prescription and never shared with friends or family. It's dangerous and illegal. So talk with your kids and guide them through the challenges of growing up safe and healthy. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
So talk, they hear you. You can do it if you try.
And expanded Inside Sources. Inside Sources.
So we've already spent some time talking about the U.S. weighing in on the Israeli-Iran conflict by attacking nuclear facilities over the weekend. And We have in studio with us Jay Evenson, who's the opinion editor for the Deseret News. But I have to say, your headline of "Don't Cry for Iran's Regime" makes me want to sing "Don't Cry for Me, Argentina." Right? I mean, I guess that shows my age, because that was the first thing that came to mind. But we do have this one sound bite. So the Israeli defense minister today said Israel is stepping up its attacks, and I think that's really a lot of the point of your article. So
expanded their strikes on regime targets. Israel has carried out strikes on Revolutionary Guard headquarters, the Ministry of Energy, one of the units or departments of Tehran University that is connected to the regime.
So we have, well, let's not cry for Iran's regime, but you also pointed out in your article, what is it we need to pay attention to or be aware of?
Yes, thank you for having me on. It's interesting now we've joined. I mean, we used to have the argument about whether diplomacy is better than military action, but now that's moot because we have joined the fight. And the problem is when you begin an armed conflict, you really can't predict where it's going to go or what's going to happen. So we're waiting to see, I guess, what Iran does in retaliation. And they have a number of proxies in the region, the Houthis and Yemen and other groups that could attack or do terrorist acts. That Iran has always been good at finding ways to distance itself from those types of things. There's also the question of whether we're going to have regime change. And of course, President Trump keeps sort of nibbling around that issue and dropping little suggestions every now and then that he thinks we should, and then officially saying, no, that's not what we're about. There are, and I have friends and contacts who are familiar with what's going on in the ground in Iran. And there are groups there that would really like regime change. Mm-hmm. The public is not enamored by the Ayatollah or what's happening there. The problem is when the United States gets involved, it reawakens old animosities toward the U.S. Your listeners may not be aware that the CIA sponsored a coup in Iran in 1953, which they have since acknowledged doing, that put the Shah in place for about 25 or so years, which led to the Islamic Revolution in 1979. Every school child in Iran, I'm told, learns about this coup. It's something they know. It's ingrained in them. They may have friendly feelings toward the United States, but I think it's very easy to reawaken some of those old animosities. And if the regime starts talking about the great Satan, right, which is what they used to call the United States, it could actually make it harder for regime change over there.
So talk to us, Jay, about what they mean by regime change. And I guess it's obvious, but so does the conflict get to the point where the regime says, or the people say, we need a change, we need to do something different? And what would that look like in Iran, do you think?
Well, Iran has an interesting political system because you do have the ruling clerics that are kind of over everything. But there is a democratic process under that. They elect a president every so often, and they elect a parliament. Now, the ruling clerics do have control over who runs, who the candidates are. So it's not
it's not free and fair elections.
No, it's not. But you have those institutions in place. If you were to do away with the ruling clerics, you could enact some form of parliamentary government and democracy. Regime change in situations like this never really happen unless there's force, unless there's violence, and unless enough people gather and overwhelm military forces, and then it becomes clear that the rulers have to leave, and then they seek for asylum in Russia or somewhere, and they leave. So I think that's kind of the scenario under which that would happen.
Well, we've seen this recently, and you talked to us about what happened in Bangladesh, right, where there was an uprising, 1,400 students, I think you said revolutionaries, died as they were trying to affect change over there. And then in Syria, there was recently in the last few months, right, a regime change there as well. And Assad fled to Russia. Yes. Right, for asylum, as you said. So we do have even current examples of things like that happening. But one of the things I was surprised to learn is that Tehran has something like 10 million people who live just in that city alone.
Yes, And that's what we have to be so careful with. And from everything that I have read, the strikes that we conducted over on Saturday were targeted and did not include, I haven't heard anything about civilian deaths. So I think it's possible with what we've done so far that we could have the people still on our side in this. If you start killing civilians, that's a whole different ballgame, and then people unite behind their government and against you.
We saw that with the 9/11 attacks, right? It just really unified our country and said, okay, we've got a common enemy now, and I could see that happening there as well.
Interesting to watch the reaction from the rest of that region. Other Arab states have condemned what we did, but they're not condemning it really loudly. And I'm reading things, different reports that say that the rest of the Arab world doesn't like Iran too much either. And President Trump's not too far off when he calls them a bully. And they don't want Iran to have nuclear weapons any more than Israel or any other country does.
Yeah, and it seems like we've gone back and forth a little bit in our country with respect to Iran and its ability to have nuclear capabilities, between sanctions on Iran and a nuclear agreement that we have full and free access to your nuclear capabilities, and that you agree not to increase or continue to develop nuclear technology. The current administration has sort of, I think Trump has said he didn't like the Iran deal. He didn't like the nuclear deal, and he was going to do away with that, which almost ironically opened up the floodgates for them to go ahead and start creating more nuclear technology, and kind of got us here almost.
Well, we started with that deal in 2015 when Barack Obama was president, and it lifted sanctions against Iran if they would agree to limit their work on nuclear weapons. But there were deadlines in that agreement. There was a 10-year deadline on centrifuge work, and this is 2025. That would have expired by now. Yeah. There were other deadlines on other things that Iran would have done. It didn't really solve the problem. It put it off down the road. And I think that's what a lot of people are saying, is that, look, we've tried sanctions. A lot of this sort of has echoes of Saddam Hussein, but that was a very interesting case, because when we finally got in there, lo and behold, he didn't have any weapons of mass destruction. But he, in order to save face for his people, he had to act like he did. And so, in a strange roundabout way, I don't know that that's the case with the ruling clerics in Iran now. But you have to believe reports that there is evidence that they were putting together weapons. Why else would you have a bunker several hundred feet underground?
To power the city.
Perhaps.
Your editorial was somewhat critical, or what, I don't know what the word is, of the current regime, but very sympathetic toward the people of Iran. I mean, they don't want what's going on there very much, and you would expect that maybe the thought is a new regime might create a different level of cooperation or conflict or whatever with the neighbors in that part of the country.
Right. People are rightly critical of the Shah, and they didn't have freedom under the Shah, but they had a great deal more freedom than they have now, and people were earning pretty good money. They had good education system. There were a lot of things good under the Shah. Now, that was a while ago. Now we're talking, 46 years ago?
That's a long time ago, yeah.
I think people still remember that, but only the older people do. So you have to, there's always the question, when you knock out a regime, what happens next? Right. Who fills that power vacuum? And I think the people of Iran really would like a representative government and to be part of the community of states that is free and will trade freely with one another and cooperate. But we have to wait to see what happens if we should reach that point.
Yeah, it's been an interesting development. You remind me, Jay, of when I was in college, and sort of the whole down with the Shah. It was about that period of time when you get the new regime and you get Ayatollah Khomeini and the problems that happened there. And
there were. Do you remember hostages? Right.
Right.
This was the whole Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan thing, because they were held for 444 days.
Yes.
Right. So American hostages held for that long.
Well, thanks again for joining us, Jay. You've been so generous with us.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You're our Monday guy now from now.
Love it. I'll be here every Monday.
Okay, well, I know you don't work 9 to 5, and I know that a lot of Americans are starting to revisit the whole idea of a 9 to 5 workday, and we're talking to some people about what they call the infinite workday. We'll talk about that after the break.
10:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Andy Farnsworth. KSL's top story this hour: a major wildfire in Washington County has destroyed more than a dozen homes, and it's still burning. The Forsyth Fire is burning around Pine Valley. Utah Governor Spencer Cox traveled there to address the situation.
But we can replace property, we can't replace people. And the most important statistic today is that nobody has been injured or killed on this fire. That matters to us, and that's always our first priority.
As of the last update, the fire has already burned more than 7,000 acres and is 0% contained. A new city budget in West Jordan could mean residents end up paying less in taxes. KSL News Radio's Josue Sanchez has more.
West Jordan city officials say now that the city has paid off a bond and is making more from commercial businesses, residents could see a slight decrease in property taxes. Utah Taxpayers Association President Billy Hesterman says residents should know how the budget is being used and voice their opinion to their council member. The new budget will include funding for a new concrete crew, a police officer, and future fire truck replacements.
The city council will hold a public hearing before the budget is finalized in August. Our top national story this hour from ABC News: the Trump administration is calling the weekend strikes on 3 nuclear sites in Iran a success. The Saturday strikes targeted sites that the administration claims were housing nuclear materials like uranium. Your money at this moment: the Dow has been hovering on both sides of even. Right now it's down 84 points to 42,121. Coming up, a gradual warm-up all week long. KSL weather is next. KSL News Time, 10:31. The sources where we get our news matters.
When you listen to Utah's Morning News, we want you to feel the stories are important to you and trustworthy. This is Amanda Dixon.
And I'm Andy Farnsworth. Join us weekday mornings on KSL News Radio.
The wait is almost over. After 2 years of renovation, the perfect downtown lunch spot is now almost open. The Garden Restaurant opens on June 30th. The Garden Restaurant offers a beautifully designed space and deliciously fresh menu. It's close to everything downtown, next to the Temple Square block. If you need something quick and on the go, or to meet a client, friend, or place to relax, the Garden Restaurant offers healthy options like handcrafted sandwiches, soups, unique salads, plus traditional favorites like homemade pot pies and the famous Lion House rolls. The Garden's new look and tasty menu offer something for everyone, featuring dine-in, patio seating, lobby seating, and grab-and-go or quick online ordering. Visit the Garden today. Reimagine space with remarkable taste. Easy street access on the ground floor of the Joseph Smith Memorial Building. Open weekdays 11 to 3. Check out the menu at thegardenslc.com. Fresh flavors, iconic location. The Garden Restaurant, opening next week, June 30th. See you there.
This Friday, join KSL News Radio and NPS from 10 to 1 as the movie show stops by. Then, browse and uncover what makes NPS so great. With 4 locations, NPS takes a new inventory every day. Then, they check all competitors' retail pricing before marking items down 20 to 70% off. You're invited to visit the movie show this Friday from 10 to 1. And that's the first step to discovering NPS. Visit npsstore.com to begin your own NPS adventure. npsstore.com.
Tonight on KSL, a Utah property with a remarkable past.
So here's the legendary pool that everybody talks about.
From Hollywood Hideaway.
It's also said that Marilyn Monroe spent some time here.
To urban legend.
It was kind of a spooky thing.
And it could all be yours. KSL takes you inside this unique location and the search for a new owner to restore the glory.
I can only imagine what it would have been like to spend some time here back in the heyday.
Hints of Hollywood, Utah's legendary listing. Tonight at 10 on KSL.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Mountain America's Double Rewards credit card promotion. Here's Heather Kelly.
Well, we still have a bit of slowing southbound I-15 through Kaysville. That's due to construction that's happening every day now right around Shepherd Lane. In Farmington, we did have a crash southbound 15 just before 106 South in Sandy. That cleared about 10 minutes ago, so all those delays coming out of Midvale are gone. And right now, you've got a really good drive on all the other freeways. While you're planning your day, plan for comfort too with the Good Feet store. Find the location nearest you at goodfeet.com. Heather Kelly in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, a very pleasant 78-degree high today with some clouds. Then we start to warm up each day through the rest of the week until we get back to the upper 90s by Friday, 97 possible on Saturday. Right now, it's mostly cloudy and 59 degrees in Salt Lake City. I'm Andy Farnsworth from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
The all-new Inside Sources. Your inside access to the people and policies shaping Utah's future. Here are Greg Skordas and Holly Richardson on KSL News Radio.
Working 9 to 5, what a way to make a living, barely getting by.
So that famous song, right, really defined work at the time. You work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, but that is changing, and it seems like really it never ends. And look, I've been a mom, and my work day started before dawn and ended way after midnight, way after dark. But there's an article that really starts to look at how the workday for Americans across the country is starting to become infinite. It's really hard to shut off today's technology.
Yeah, and I almost think it's impossible for a lot of careers, a lot of jobs, mine and yours being perfect examples, to say, okay, it's 5 o'clock, let's go home and let's forget about it.
No news will happen.
And I mean, our this program itself, I mean, we're working on it. You're sending things out Sunday night saying we should consider this, we should consider that. You
5 o'clock
Monday
in the morning.
Yeah, we're getting things back and forth because there are a lot of jobs, and I understand there are jobs that can be 9 to 5 and should be. But in today's society, even my legal career, when I was a full-time lawyer, my phone's on, and I was on call for
that's right.
police agencies, for other groups. Like if you get a call at 3 o'clock in the morning, you take a call at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And it seems another thing I would say, once we got cell phones, and I can remember, I mean, people are like, cell phones? We always had cell phones. No, we didn't actually. But it tethered you to the workplace. It tethered you to clients, to your associates, in ways that, I mean, I know they could pick up the landline, but it seemed like the cell phone.
But not if you were outside your house, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Or driving or something like that. Plus texting, emailing, that kind of a thing. You're right there with the workplace all the time.
Look, the study is actually from Microsoft, and they looked at millions of global users, and they anonymized the data, but they looked at Outlook and Teams and PowerPoint. And even just looking at people using their products, what they're finding is that the average employee will send or receive over 50 messages outside of quote-unquote normal business hours, but that during those official 8-hour workday, they're getting interrupted by notifications every 1.75 minutes. Like, that's so many interruptions, right? And I think some other data, different data, says it takes us 15 minutes to get back in the groove to working if we've been interrupted. And so just imagine your entire workday, you're getting hundreds of interruptions coming on average less than every 2 minutes. So hard to stay focused.
Yeah, it really is. And it's hard to drop the focus. It's hard to say, I can't work for a few minutes. I mean, it's just such a part of our lives now. Right. Some of us that have jobs, and we're just in communication all the time. My staff, we're talking all the time. We're texting back and forth. You've got court Thursday. You've got court tomorrow morning.
Right.
What can we do here?
Right.
And you and I are going back and forth. I think it's a way of the future. I don't think it's going to get any better. But yeah, these texting, talking, that kind of stuff all day long.
You see all kinds of productivity hacks now, right? In fact, I see this ad recurring on social media that says so-and-so took all the apps off his phone and was able to write a whole book in less than a year, right? I mean, so trying to hack our productivity. And we actually want to hear from our listeners today. So you can text us at 57500. What is your hack to shutting off the infinite workday? Or do you just say, I just work all day, every day?
Yeah, hack? your method. Yeah. We're seeing that meetings after 8 p.m., this is weird, are up 16% from last year.
Yeah.
16% meetings after 8 p.m. And that's, I guess that includes phone calls, conversations,
but
group
if
meetings,
if you work for a global company at all, then you're going to have people in different time zones that you've got to coordinate with. We know in this number surprised me and actually made me sad that 57%, more than half of the meetings are ad hoc. There's no calendar invite. If I don't have it on my calendar, man, that's rough for me to just drop everything and jump on.
Think of what Zoom, WebEx, that kind of thing has done, because you can meet.
Yeah.
Not that you should.
Right.
Not that it's
But
necessarily
anytime,
a good
hey,
idea.
let's jump
but,
on a Zoom
hey,
call.
let's meet. You guys want to have a Zoom call today? I don't know. People seem to get the impression, excuse me, that if you're looking each other in the eye, you can get a lot more done instead of the group calls or group chats or something like that. But I probably get Zoom calls, once a day.
I think we've gotten better too, though. I mean, Zoom, that technology was it was in place, but when the pandemic shut everything down, it really got a lot better. And I think we're seeing now more productivity than previously on Zoom calls. So people are engaged. They're not, putting up just their face and filter, although sometimes I do that. But
at what cost? I mean, yeah, we are much more productive. We are better.
It depends.
24/7.
Right. Right. Because we're on 24/7. That's why.
Right.
We work more hours. Yeah, that's funny. But people who are working remotely, right, then you don't have your commute time. And so does that translate to extra work time? It did for my husband when he went remote. He had been 100% in the office and then went remote, and now he's back in the office like one day a week. But he doesn't take the commute time as work at home time or spend time with the kids time. He takes it as additional work time. So productivity went up, but they have an extra 2 hours a day.
I was going to say commute time is work time for me.
That's right.
Because you have phone in your car.
Yeah.
And I live an hour away from KSL.
Yeah, same.
Up in northern Utah.
Different
you
direction.
live south, but you I mean, it's nice to listen, and I try to listen to the radio, and I try to keep up on events and current things, but people know I'm driving at certain times of the day. And
That's
so
right,
they'll
and they
call
can catch you.
text me. Right. And my phone has so many capabilities that you can talk text. You can see when you're getting texts and when calls are coming through and who it is and what they want.
Yeah.
And it never stops for me.
I think one of the interesting things with this conversation, we've talked about remote work, right, and how that has changed how people do their work day. But when I was mostly working remotely for the Deseret News, I could do things early in the morning, and I worked a chunk of time, usually 5 a.m. to 10 a.m., and then I would do some family stuff, and then I could go back to work, right? So there was this task, I guess, in blending of tasks, right, during the day. But one of the things that concerns me is we have this back to the office move, right, where people are like, well, we want people back in the office, but it doesn't stop the phone calls late at night or early in the morning or the text messages, right? And do people feel like, well, if my boss texts me at 8:30 p.m., I better respond?
Yeah, I have to ask you a question.
Sure.
You produce this Utah policy
Yep.
every day, every weekday. And of course, a lot of it is stuff that happened during the night. I mean, how and when do you produce that? Or are you just doing it all day?
So, no, generally speaking, I start in the evening and I'll do stuff from the day. It depends. I do have an intern now who's helping me with it, so that's great. But I start in the evening and I look at news stories that have happened during the day that maybe I didn't capture the day before. But I am up early every morning, at least by 5, sometimes earlier than 5 a.m. to look and see what has happened. It's 7 a.m. on the East Coast, right? Maybe stuff happened overnight. There's always something that happens, right, in this news cycle, right? So I want to make sure I've got that, yeah. So it's like 5 in the morning for that.
And then what time does it usually come out?
It
seems
comes
like
out
I
at
get it about
7:15. 7:15
okay.
to 7:30 in the morning.
Right.
Yeah, every morning.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think it's really helpful because for us, those of us that look at it, it's great. But for those of you that are creating it, it's 5 days a week, right?
It's 5 days a week, so not 7. So,
Right, right.
So yeah, it's 5 days a week, and people can sign up if they want it. It's utahpolicy.com, and there's just a place to subscribe. But what that newsletter is really meant to do, it's not a deep dive in the news. It's really meant for you to be able to skim it and have an idea of what's going on in the world and in Utah, so that you feel like, okay, if there's something I want to know more about, I can take more time. But it really is intended to be skimmed.
Yeah, we provide some content for the show from that.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
And this show provides content for the newsletter, so there you go.
Yeah, no, my kids and my wife just think that I'm on call and that I work 24/7.
Well,
I
it's
mean,
mostly true.
Like my daughter used to say, "Dad, you're a workaholic," which isn't true, wasn't true. Well, partly true, but it is. But you do kind of want to be available, and if you're working in certain industries where you're soliciting clients or you're getting work, whatever it is,
Yeah.
you want to be available. You want to make sure.
Yeah.
I don't care what you're doing. If you're painting houses or practicing law or
Yeah.
or fixing plumbing.
I was a midwife for about 20 years,
Yeah, there you
and
go.
I had to have my phone on around all night long. Right, most of my calls came in the middle of the night. Right, it took about 5 years for my husband to stop asking, "Where are you going at 3 a.m.?" I'm going to help another baby.
Right, and then you get people who go, "Hey, I called you last night at 11, and you didn't answer
Oh,
the
no.
phone."
Yeah,
right.
that's
What
bad
are you
when you're a
doing?
midwife. Yeah.
Hey, well, we want to hear from you. We would like you to call us and tell us how you're dealing with the infinite workday and what you're doing to shut it off. So text us at 57500 and give us your comments and let us know what you do, how you deal with this workday, and what the rest of us can learn from. We'll be right back.
Regardless of how old your air conditioner is, there are a few things you can do to help it last as many summers as possible. What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and like so many things in our life, it's easy to take our air conditioner for granted. If you keep a clean filter, rinse the outdoor unit off every once in a while, and have it serviced once a summer, you can reduce your risk of unexpected breakdowns. But eventually it will break down, and if someone tells you that your only option is to replace it, don't be afraid to get a second opinion. You could save thousands of dollars repairing it instead of replacing it. Any Hour rarely comes across an air conditioner that just can't be repaired. That doesn't mean you won't choose to replace it anyway, but being told you don't have options, that's not cool. So if you want honest answers and straightforward options, give Any Hour Services a call. And remember, every week this summer, Any Hour Services is giving away an air conditioner to one lucky customer as part of our Coolest Summer Sweepstakes. No purchase is necessary. You can see official rules or schedule your service at anyhour.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
KSL offers the best daily newsletter in the state. It's the 3 things you need to know. Every weekday, we deliver quality and relevant content to your inbox. No ads, no spam, just the 3 things you need to know to be informed about the world around you. Subscribe today. Visit KSLNewsRadio.com or text the word inbox to 57500. That's inbox to 57500.
Hi, I'm Dr. Matthew Wappett, Executive Director of the Institute for Disability Research Policy and Practice, or the IDRPP, at Utah State University. Did you know that 1 in 4 Utahns have a disability? Think about that. Your neighbor, your colleagues, your family. At some point, disability affects everyone. The USU IDRPP is on the front lines, driving change right here in Utah and across the nation for people with disabilities. For over 50 years, IDRPP has been Utah's University Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities, generating vital research that shapes effective policies and delivers real-world solutions. From groundbreaking research to evidence-based training, the IDRPP empowers individuals with disabilities, their families, and the professionals who support them. We're making our communities more accessible and welcoming for everyone. Find out more at idrpp.usu.edu.
Hi, it's Tori DeVito. In every family, small conversations can make a big impact. I grew up on tour with my parents. Kind of different, but we bonded over music just like other families do over sports, camping, or other interests. And we talked. Little everyday conversations from silly to serious that built a foundation over time. Honest conversations, like when my dad shared his experiences as an alcoholic.
Your honesty about that part of your life gave me a sense of integrity that I wanted to uphold in my own life. And I was so grateful that you and Mom had become these sober, stable people who were always there for me.
I wanted you to know from someone who's been in recovery more than 30 years now that hard work is what creates success, not alcohol or other drugs, whether it's music or anything else. I said it a lot, and I'm glad you took it to heart.
Talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Ready to order?
Yes. We're earning unlimited 3% cash back on dining and entertainment with a Capital One Saver card, so let's just get one of everything.
Everything?
Fire everything! The Capital One Saver card is at table 27 and they're earning unlimited 3% cash back.
Yes, Chef! This is so nice.
Had a feeling you'd want 3% cash back on dessert.
Ooh, tiramisu!
Earn unlimited 3% cash back on dining and entertainment with the Capital One Saver card. Capital One, what's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com for details.
I'm Ed Evans, CEO of Consumer Cellular. No, we're not one of the big guys. Truth is, we don't want to be. If you're over 50, Big Wireless probably has you paying for more data than you might need. You could be throwing away thousands over a lifetime. We're not here to be the biggest. We're here to bring you something we believe is better. Our plans start at just $20. You'll get the same fast nationwide coverage without the big wireless bill.
Call 1-888-FREEDOM or visit consumercellular.com/facts. Plans include $5 credit for auto pay and e-billing. See site for additional facts.
Come on, the meeting's already started.
Sometimes it's important.
Last call, boarding gate number 9.
Sometimes it's urgent.
Prep for alarm.
Sometimes it's vital. Hospital treatment within 1 hour of a stroke can prevent lifelong disability. If you notice someone experiencing sudden weakness on one side or having a problem speaking, walking, or seeing, call 911 fast. Stroke. Know the signs. Act in time. A message from the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke.
Inside Sources.
Did you know the average employee now sends or receives over 50 messages outside of business hours? What happened to 9 to 5? What is your hack? Where did we get that word, Holly? What is your hack to shutting off the infinite workday? Call us this morning at 801-575-TALK or text us at 57500. That is 801-575-TALK or text us at 57500. We're learning from Axios that workers are interrupted, we talked about this in the last segment, by notifications every 1.75 minutes during an official 8-hour workday, Holly, which means
275 times.
275 times a day. What is wrong with this? And you know what?
Pinging.
That's my day.
Yeah.
I mean, that is my day.
I don't get
Let's be
that
honest.
many,
It
so
is
I feel like I'm interrupted a lot. It's not that often.
Yeah, and
not that much.
even when we're driving or doing or in court and I'm sitting there, the fact that we have a cell phone.
Right.
Now I shouldn't admit that I look at my cell phone
In court.
'cause I really don't, but I do have that little thing that comes up on your screen that so and so's texting you or something like that. It's just crazy.
I get spam calls, but at least now my phone tells me probable spam.
So we have our producer Caitlin with us this morning, and so we're the geezer generation.
That's
What
right.
do you
grow up with
youngsters
cell
do?
phones.
Are you just used to it? Is that just something you expect to
Well, no, it's terrible. I think that it's a bad work-life balance of what's kind of happened, but it's just the way technology has emerged. But also, depending on how you work, I relate to this because I work in news. I'm only supposed to work so many hours a day. I try really hard to do that, but it is difficult when you get a notification like,
U.S. bombs Iran.
Right. I was just going to say that, so it's very hard to shut off sometimes, but the way I think that we have some control over it. I hope that most of the people have management that believes in disconnecting.
Mm-hmm.
But you can control it by, this is what I do. My phone completely goes silent it's 8 p.m. now, but I have different focus modes on my phone. I don't know if you know what those are, but they exist if you have an iPhone, or any phone really can do this, but your phone can detect where you're at, or you can set it for different hours. So like when I am here at KSL, I have a work focus mode and I allow all the news notifications, every single one. I know that I allow that. I allow my messages, my calls, everything like that. I don't get any notifications for social media ever, but that's just my own balance. But then when I leave here, I have like a middle ground one where I'll get some, and then like I can go home, and certain times it goes silent. And I do sign up for like texts and stuff from news organizations, so when I can turn off the app notifications, that helps, but I know if something crazy is happening, I will get a text, so I'll allow that. There's ways to balance it, I think.
Tim from Harriman, tell us what you do.
Well, for me, it's about boundaries. I too am old enough to remember the time before cell phones. And if you remember, if someone wanted to get in touch with you, they called if your home phone. And if you weren't home, they had two options, wait for you to call back or call you later. So, and remarkably, we got things done. So as far as work goes, I've made it clear that, just because I have a cell phone doesn't mean anyone has 24/7 access to me. And if someone from work calls me at home 8 or 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night, whatever it may be, they know that the building better be burning down or someone's on their way to the ER.
Yeah.
Other than that, leave me a note and I'll deal with it.
That's great boundaries, Tim. Thanks for sharing those.
Tim,
tolerate.
Yeah, Tim, let me ask you a question, because I mean we still have landlines here at the office. I don't have a landline at home anymore, but I remember. Do you have a landline at home?
Not anymore, no.
Does
I can
anybody?
remember when
Right.
we got our first landline at home.
Yeah.
I can remember that. I can remember.
Wow.
Yeah. Interesting.
Well,
Well,
and it was we had one phone. It was in the kitchen.
That's right.
And you know, if you wanted to talk on the phone, you stood there by the phone and you talked. And one of the greatest things ever to me was when my mom bought an extra long extension cord, and I could sit in the living room in my chair and still talk to my friends on the phone.
Yeah,
but the point is, it's about what you'll tolerate, and you set some boundaries, and you give people authority to make decisions when you're not there, and that's how I do it, and so far it's worked pretty well for me.
Yeah, thanks, Tim.
Interesting. You know, we had the landline in the kitchen too, and you would talk on it once in a while. But we had an extension in my mom's bedroom, so she wanted to listen to our phone calls. She could. Those days are gone. I'm glad we had a Tim that called us that can remember the days. I hadn't even thought about the landline. Of course, we all had those.
Yeah, you know, and
my office still does too.
Caitlin, you might have found that this has changed, but we used to leave messages on an answering machine.
Which is great. He said something about not having 24/7 access to people, and I think that has kind of become the expectation, because we all know that we're all super connected to these devices. And it's something I've been kind of adapting to as well, with just even receiving a text. I always feel like, I mean, I do like to respond quickly because I don't want to forget to respond, but there's an expectation to respond quickly.
Yeah.
And I think that having that control of like, I'll get to that when I get to that, it's like an email.
Yeah.
But I don't think it has to be as urgent. I mean, if you're on the clock, respond when you can respond. But there's definitely boundaries that you can set with your device. It's just definitely harder. And I would love to have a home phone only again, I think. I don't know. That sounds fun.
I don't know. We would, I struggle not to get a hold of you, right? I think that's one of the things, too, that has changed is our expectation of how quickly people should respond, right? And you mentioned that, but I remember back in the day, like if you sent a letter, you would expect that it would take, X number of days, or if it was international, a week or more to get there and then to send back. So you would expect maybe 2 weeks turnaround time if you were sending a letter to a missionary overseas or something. Now, if we don't hear back in like 5 minutes, it's like, what's wrong?
Right.
How come they didn't answer me? What's wrong?
Trauma response. I totally get that as well. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's really interesting. And there's my generation, I think, is adapting to this a lot. And I've been trying to balance my own use with my phone for the last few months.
I would expect also that your generation may not remember not having a cell phone, not being tied. I mean, your job is anything but 9 to 5. And you couldn't do it 9 to 5, or let's say
I try to keep it contained, but yeah, it bleeds a little, so it's hard. But yeah, I mean, I remember not having a cell phone, but it was when I was maybe grade school.
Yeah.
And then after that, I always had one. Like a smartphone was probably more high school. But in my work life, it's always there. And one thing, just we talked about how many notifications we get. Would you say 1.75 per minute in a work day?
Every 1.75 minutes.
I just think about how distracting that is from your actual work. Because I
Right.
know that's a problem for me, because you're always just like, you're focused on something and then this goes off. Focus on that. You got a calendar notification, you get an email, you get all this. And that is my brain all the time. But that's why I choose to turn it off.
Now we all have ADHD.
Yeah, I think I'm not saying that this is factual because I'm not a doctor or anything, but I think that when I took my social media break and took some time off from my phone, my focus improved significantly, and I was so much more productive.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that's something people should pay attention to.
I mean, it definitely has an impact, right? And then it spills over into the social media use and stuff. But we're raising a granddaughter. She's only 10, true digital native. Right. So when she was 1, she was scrolling on my phone and could get places she wanted to go when she was 1 year old. It is crazy, right? It is crazy. And it's just her vocabulary. In fact, for a while, I thought it was funny. She loved to watch Peppa Pig, which is a British show. And she would say to me when she was like 3 years old, she'd say to me in a British accent, Mum, I'm going on holiday in the aeroplane, which I thought was hilarious. So
yeah, and I don't know, just thinking one thing with the workday situation, when you just made me think of influencers, because they're we're connected to to that at a very young age. There's the benefit of, having that flexibility when you're just like an entrepreneur or even working from home, like you said you do. But that flexibility kind of comes with a cost that it doesn't always turn off unless you're really disciplined with those that, I don't know, make your own eight hours that you work. But yeah, I believe in boundaries. I think that we all need it, and I think that we can improve our focus. But this is true. I can relate to this a lot.
Well, I hope that some of our listeners gained something from that, and I know I did, because I never shut my phone off. And when I get up in the morning, I look at the missed calls and missed texts and check my emails, and it's sad. My wife is like, "What are you doing?"
Set some boundaries, Greg.
Yeah, I need to do that. We'll be back after the break.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
It's 11 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Jessica Lowell. KSL's top story this hour: the fire burning near Bryce Canyon grew over the last 24 hours from 16,000 acres to just over 23,000. The France Canyon fire is about 10% contained. State fire officials say they've been working to make sure it stays away from campgrounds. If you're planning a trip down south, be wary of the smoke. Officials say visibility is low in some areas. Our top national story this hour: explosions in Qatar today. Witnesses say they saw what appeared to be missiles in the skies over the country. There was no immediate acknowledgement from government authorities of any attack. The U.S. over the weekend struck sites that the administration claims were housing nuclear materials. Iran is vowing to respond.
Iran's supreme leader at the moment is not threatening the U.S., but others inside Iran absolutely are. They say that President Trump took a gamble and there will be retaliation. But we have to wait and see. The foreign minister and others have made it clear that if they do retaliate, it will be at a time, a place, and in a manner of their own choosing.
ABC's Ian Pannell reporting from Tel Aviv. Israel is reportedly expanding its war against Iran as well. They recently struck the gates of a Tehran prison notorious for holding political activists. And your money at this moment: Dow down 123 points, NASDAQ down 27. Coming up, temperatures ticking up again. KSL weather is next. KSL News Time, 11:02.
Mornings are for recharging.
And they're for starting your day right.
We volunteer to join you in the car. Get news and weather at 102.7 FM during the most important part of your day.
Andy and Amanda, each morning between 5 and 9 on KSL News Radio.
It's Jeff Jr. from Trajan Wealth, and I've got something important to talk to you about: your 401k. If you have changed jobs, there are two very important considerations. You don't want to leave your 401k behind, and you don't want to roll it over into your new company plan without consulting Trajan Wealth first. 401ks will often have limited investments or age-based options. Since companies have to make choices to suit all employees, they may not be suited to you, which could cost you fees and money. When you roll over your 401k into an IRA, you not only keep your money growing tax deferred, but you also gain access to a world of investment options specifically designed for you. Trajan Wealth and our fiduciary advisors have helped thousands, and we can do the same for you. Call Trajan today at 801-899-7600. 801-899-7600.
Advisory services offered through Trajan Wealth LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor.
The IRS finally caught up with Louie.
I hadn't paid my taxes in 8 years. I owe the IRS a lot of money.
Louie was in deep trouble.
We're going to take your house, put a lien on your bank account, garnish your pay. They don't care. They're going to take your paycheck.
Louie found out about Optima Tax Relief, the leading tax resolution firm. A-plus rated by the Better Business Bureau, they've resolved over $1 billion for their clients.
Optima Tax, they help me. They calm me down. They make me feel comfortable, and I trust them.
Louie has a lot to be thankful for.
I don't owe the IRS anymore, and I'm able to live a comfortable life, a lot better life. It was because of Optima Tax.
For tax help you can trust, call Optima now for a free consultation. Take it from Louie.
If you owe the IRS, don't go it alone. Give Optima Tax a call. They can help you.
Call 800-343-6460. 800-343-6460. 800-343-6460. Optima Tax Relief. Testimonial from an actual client. Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Mountain America's Double Rewards credit card promotion. Here's Heather Kelly.
We don't have any accidents reported anywhere across the Wasatch Front, but we do have some unusual slowdowns for this time of the morning. It's northbound I-15 as you leave the Spaghetti Bowl in South Salt Lake, head into downtown. Other than that, you're going to have good speeds on I-15 either direction. No problems on I-80 through Parley's Canyon or coming out of Tooele County. Traffic's rough, but your parking doesn't have to be. GoPave Utah keeps things smooth with expert asphalt maintenance at gopavutah.com. That's gopavutah.com. Heather Kelly in the KSL Traffic Center.
Highs still in the 70s today, but we'll be back in the 80s tomorrow. Highs in the 90s by Thursday. Right now, it is 60 degrees and cloudy. I'm Jessica Lowe from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com or Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
We are learning now some breaking developments in Iran, and we've seen that they have fired some missiles toward U.S. bases in Qatar and Iraq. There seems to be some ongoing news. The attacks in Doha, in Qatar, and we're going to toss to ABC News.
Hearing explosions, but we're in this very foggy situation at the moment, and we just need to take a breath and look at what possibly could have happened and wait until we get facts issued from the Pentagon and from the White House and potentially from Qatari officials. Sorry, just one other thing worth adding. Of course, these bases have sophisticated air defense of their own, but Qatar also has sophisticated air defense. It has the U.S. Patriot and THAAD missile systems, some of which are being used here in Israel as Iran attacks. So it's possible when people say they've heard explosions that these are intercepts. So at the moment, I think we just need to take our time, deep breath time, and wait and see exactly what's happened.
And Ian, it does sound like the Iranians are now calling this operation Annunciation of Victory. I want to bring in our senior political correspondent, Rachel Scott, for a little bit more on the reaction here. We're also seeing some video from inside Doha. Rachel, what are you watching for in terms of reaction from the U.S., particularly with what we've heard from the president this morning?
Well, Diane, I just left the West Wing. I spoke to a senior administration official who told me that the White House, the Department of Defense, they are aware of and they are closely monitoring any potential threats to U.S. troops, even including Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. We know that's an air base that the president did visit back in May on his first foreign trip to the Middle East. It comes, as Ian was saying, amid these warnings from President Trump himself, but also key members of his administration about any potential retaliation. The president saying directly if future attacks would be far greater and a lot easier. The president saying any retaliation by Iran against the United States of America will be met with far greater than what was witnessed on that initial night that they did strike. We know right now the president, per his public schedule, is meeting with his national security team in the Oval Office. We have watched members of his national security team, including the director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, make their way into the West Wing as we anticipate more from the White House and this administration on their reaction and next possible steps, as the president has warned.
And I want to bring in our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce. Mary, you were actually at this very base just over a month ago when President Trump went to visit. This is a critical base for several U.S. operations in the past and expected to be in the future. What do you make of this, Iran now announcing that they're attacking it?
And it is the largest U.S. air base in the region, obviously positioned critically. And the president was there just a few weeks ago on May 15th. I was there. This was during his first big foreign trip, his first trip in the Middle East as well. And at the time, it was interesting, the president speaking to thousands of U.S. troops there. And at the time, he said that it was his priority to end conflicts, not start them. But he added in those remarks that he will not hesitate to wield American power if it is necessary. The president at the time saying, when we are threatened, America's military will answer our enemies without even thinking about it. Overwhelming strength and devastating force. That was the quote from the president during that speech. And it gets to this question of what comes next. We know that the president, as Rachel was just saying, has cautioned and warned Iran that if they don't reach peace on his terms, that the U.S. will respond in kind with that same kind of skill, precision, and force that he warned about in that speech over the weekend. I think obviously it was expected that Iran would respond in some way. Certainly that is what the Ayatollah has been telegraphing. Now it appears they are doing just that. The big question, how will the U.S. Then respond given the kind of rhetoric and language that we have heard from the president? Certainly this is going to be what the president is discussing this afternoon with his national security team.
And we are, a U.S. official is now confirming to ABC News that Iran has, in fact, fired missiles at Qatar. I do want to try to bring up that video again that we're seeing from inside Doha. It looks like you can see those missiles coming in through the night sky there. This, again, is the largest military base in the Middle East, also has played a critical role in several conflicts. This is the video from inside Doha. Again, it looks like you can see those missiles coming in targeted at the largest U.S. air base in the Middle East. I want to bring in Ann Flaherty for a little bit more on the logistics here. Ann, what does it mean to have an attack on this base?
Yeah, so we were just getting word moments ago that a U.S. official does confirm that, in fact, Iran has fired missiles at Qatar, believed to be targeting that Al Udeid Air Force Base that we have mentioned. That is the center of the air operations for U.S. Central Command. It's a very critical base. About 10,000 troops are believed to be stationed there. U.S. officials also tell us that, look, you know, they are prepared for this. They knew that this was a risk when President Trump had ordered that attack on Iran's nuclear sites. So they had moved equipment, assets into the region precisely for this scenario. So they are expecting this to some degree. They will say that there are, air defenses that Qatar has. It is it is able to protect itself in that airspace. But a lot of concern in this building right now about U.S. troops being targeted in this attack. Diane.
And U.S. troops around the Middle East are now being told to shelter in place. Our James Longman is in Iraq. And James, what are you seeing and hearing there? And what does this mean for troops in the region in general?
Yeah, look, it's a big moment, Diane. Everyone here knew that something was coming, and I think perhaps there was a sense that there'd be a few days, perhaps that maybe that the Iranians would sort of think about what they were going to target, that it was going to be at a time of their choosing. We hear that phrase so often. Now these early reports about Qatar and the Gulf, probably the more obvious choice, given these are integral to the U.S. operation in the Middle East and have been in the post-9/11 era. Closer to Iran, though, we did imagine that they'd be striking into places like Iraq, with the Ain al-Assad base here, which has been a target for Iraqi militia time and time again, allied to Iran. There are some 40,000 U.S. troops all across this region, some in those bigger bases in the Gulf, but others at much smaller outposts in places like Iraq and in Syria as well. The United States said earlier this year they wanted to reduce their footprint in Syria, take it down to about 1,000 troops in Syria. I don't think they're there yet. They will not have, most likely, the kinds of defenses that a bigger airbase in a place like Qatar will. And people at home may remember in 2020, where Donald Trump ordered the assassination of Qasem Soleimani, the Iranian general, head of the Quds force. After he was killed, the Iranians themselves, not their proxies in Iraq, they struck the Ain al-Assad base inside Iraq. And so that was seen as the Iranians hitting directly at the Americans rather than using a proxy. This time round, though, they have fewer proxies at their disposal. Yes, there are still militias in Iraq that still function broadly in the way that they have been before the Hamas attack on October 7th. But other proxies really have been degraded. If you just look at Syria, which sits between the two countries, of course, Bashar al-Assad, really a key ally of the Iranian regime, would help the Iranians move weapons and supplies between Iran and Lebanon, where, of course, the other major proxy existed, Hezbollah. That's still in place, but Hassan Nasrallah, again, has been wiped out by the Israelis in this post-October 7th era, which is extraordinary if you just think about the number of Iranian allies who have been neutralized since that Hamas attack. The knock-on effect of that attack has just been unbelievable. And so the Iranians now do not have a Bashar al-Assad in Syria to rely upon. They do not have as much a Hezbollah empowered in Lebanon to rely upon in order to employ these proxies to hit the Americans. And so they have to do it themselves. We are yet to know the extent of this attack. Look, it's been it's understood that perhaps the Iranians have used up to half of their long-range missile capability. That's the kind of capability they would need to use to strike places in the Gulf. But their rockets, their attack drones, they still have plenty of those in their arsenal, and they're still able to strike at targets closer to home. I'm talking about Iraq, where I am, and in Syria too. So, look, we'll see the extent to which the Iranians really want to strike back. They will want to show their audience at home that they are doing something. By definition, the Iranian regime defines itself in opposition to the great Satan of America, the smaller Satan of Israel, to use their phraseology. So they will have to show a public about whom they are afraid. Let's make no bones about it. There have been massive protests in Iran. They will want to show them that they are doing something. They won't want to do too much, because that would risk their own survival. Diane?
And Ian, how are they trying to ride that line, particularly in their messaging now?
It's had two statements, one from the Iranian Air Force and another, more importantly, from the Secretariat of the Supreme National Security Council. This is a governing body for matters of national security, as the title suggests, but it's also presided over by Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, at least in normal times. Let me read you part of this statement. Whoever attacks you, attack him in the same way as he attacked you. In response to America's aggressive action and brazen act, the Islamic Republic of Iran destroyed the U.S. airbase in Al Udeid. Well, that's clearly probably not going to be the case, and we have to wait and see what damage was inflicted on it. But interestingly, they also say the number of missiles used in this quote, successful operation was the same as the number of bombs that the U.S. had used in attacking Iran's nuclear facilities. So, I mean, this is a clear tit for tat. As I said earlier, I was in Iraq when there was retaliation by Iran for the assassination of General Soleimani. That was a calibrated response. And if they fired an equivalent number back, that might also be construed as a calibrated response, but that lies in the hands of the Trump administration. They've already put themselves out there as saying any reaction will be met by an even greater response. As James says, I think it's right. I think the regime has to portray strength domestically. It's under huge amounts of pressure. It's in disarray. Many of its leaders have been killed, and there are questions being raised about how much power they continue to exercise. So it will do that. It will also be succor to their supporters throughout the region. Don't forget, at Friday prayers last Friday, we saw large-scale demonstrations, tens of thousands of people gathered around the Arab world in support of Iran. And this will also send a message to them, as well as, of course, to Iran's proxies. Just to go on to Iran's capabilities, what Israel is saying is Iran started with something in the region of around 8,000 of these ballistic missiles. Now, it's not saying it's destroyed half of those. What it's saying is it's destroyed half of its capability to launch these missiles. And that is an important distinction. Israeli officials that we've been speaking to also say there is a bottleneck in its ability to fire back. But as James says, certainly places like Qatar are close enough for them to be able to fire like this, as is Iraq and as is Syria.
And Ian, we're now hearing from the Qatari Defense Ministry. They say that the Qatari Air Defense has successfully intercepted a missile attack targeting Al Udeid Air Base. Again, that is the largest U.S. air base in the Middle East. This news from Qatar comes after Iran had announced that it had launched that attack. I want to bring in our Chief Foreign Affairs anchor, Martha Raddatz. Martha, you've spent a lot of time in this region. What do you make of this announcement now from the Qataris saying that they successfully intercepted this attack, and what does that mean for future retaliation?
Well, I've actually been inside that base there in Qatar, and the command center, the heart of air operations, really the heart of the region for the U.S., that air base. I am frankly not surprised they successfully intercepted the missile attack, because they do have air defenses there in Qatar, in the air base there. And what I've heard from the Iranians is not a surprise at all. They are going to claim, as Ian and James have both said, they are going to claim that the missile attack was successful for their domestic audience. They have been crushed in the last few days by Israel, by the U.S., and they have to, in many ways, save face. And I think that's a real issue, Diane, too. What do they do now? How do they respond going forward? It's exactly right. In 2020, it was a calibrated attack on Iraq. Ian was in Iraq at the time. I was in Iran, reporting there behind enemy lines, essentially, when they launched those missiles toward the airbase in Iraq, and that did leave 100 troops with mild traumatic brain injury. But they didn't follow on with anything. I think one of the reasons they didn't follow on is because they accidentally shot down a Ukrainian commercial airliner, or they might have continued their attacks. But I also think we really have to watch Iran still. They still have capability, and they may have taken out 50% of missile launchers or a good deal of the ballistic missiles, but they still have capability. And if they keep those missiles coming, if they aim for Iraq, if they aim for Bahrain or other bases, they're bound to have some success. And just go back to what President Trump has said in the past. He has very much said that the U.S. would respond with strength. And the U.S. and Donald Trump are certainly in a position where they would have to follow through with that threat as well.
And I want to bring in Colonel Stephen Ganyard into the conversation as well. Colonel, to Martha's point, what is Iran's next move now if Qatar is saying that they were able to intercept this missile attack on this U.S. airbase there?
Yeah, Dan, I think the most interesting thing that I've heard so far is that Khamenei said that the number of rounds that they fired at El Adid, and maybe perhaps to other U.S. bases in the region, was limited to the same number of bombs that the U.S. used. So the minimum you could consider would be 14. There were a lot more dropped than that. There were 30 Tomahawk missiles. So we'll see how they count. If they count at 14, when they could be counting somewhere up around 70 or 80, then we'll know that this was clearly just, I have to do this, and I'm going to aim it towards you, or I'm going to lose my credibility here and lose the regime. The other thing that's interesting here is we've watched the videos that are coming out of Doha, Diane, is you'll see a lot of lights in the sky, a lot of missiles in the sky. So both the Patriot and the THAAD, it's a shoot, look, shoot doctrine, and so you'll see two Patriots coming up to every inbound missile. So it's not that there are that many inbound missiles, it's that you're seeing the fire doctrine of those THAAD and Patriot batteries is to shoot two for every one incoming to make sure that they hit that missile. Another point I think that's interesting here, that obviously part of the calculus for Iran was that if they're going to shoot at other countries, even though those are U.S. bases, they are shooting at Qatar. They are declaring war on Qatar. They shoot at UAE or KSA, it's going to be declaring war on those countries. They know that. In a sense, this makes life easier for the United States, because before we had to move in lots of naval power because we didn't want to have to ask permission of countries who didn't want to get involved. All those countries are now involved and will probably more than likely to be happy to have U.S. forces very apparent and perhaps even striking Iran from their air bases, since Iran has struck them first.
And we can actually see now some of those explosions over the sky in Doha, over that U.S. military base. And now we're hearing that President Trump is meeting with top advisors at the White House as we speak. Rachel, what more can you tell us about those meetings?
Well, Diane, I could tell you that we knew that this was a meeting that was on the president's schedule initially. It was supposed to be happening starting at 1 p.m. here at the White House in the Oval Office. We are now told that this meeting with the president's national security team has now been moved to the Situation Room. I was told by a senior administration official not too long before we came on the air, as we were hearing about these strikes, that the president and the White House, the Department of Defense, were closely monitoring any threats to any of our troops, including at this air base. So now we are are told by a senior defense official right now that Secretary Hegseth, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs Canes, are currently in the Situation Room meeting with the president. And as you can imagine, one of the things that they are going to be mulling over in this moment right now is how the United States is going to respond to this. Yes, they were anticipating some of this because Iran, in the lead up before the president even made a decision on whether or not he wanted to strike, was very forceful in their warnings to the United States, making it clear that strike would be met with strike, that war would be met with war, blow with blow. They warned that repeatedly. And the president, after giving the green light, moving forward with this military strike over the weekend, then put out another warning to Iran, telling them to come to the table, that diplomatic options are still available, that they want to explore diplomacy with Iran. But he did send out that very firm warning saying that future attacks would be far greater and a lot easier. During the Pentagon press briefing over the weekend, we heard directly from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs as well as the Secretary of Defense. They reiterated what the president said in his social media posts and also to the nation, warning of against retaliation to Iran. They said it would be in poor choice, in poor favor. But right now we know the president is still inside this meeting in the Situation Room with his national security team. Diane.
Meanwhile, James, Iran must be considering their next move as well. And it's not just military. One of the big concerns is that they could close the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah, that's right. They know full well that if they decide to cause a blockade, to mine it in some way, that could disrupt global trade. Some 20% of the global oil supply passes through the straits there. So they know that that's a big move on their part. It probably would affect more the Europeans and Asia than it would the United States necessarily. But Donald Trump was keen about this particular possibility. He was actually messaging today on Truth Social saying everyone should keep oil prices low so as not to play into the hands of the enemy, he said. You know, there's what Iran does, I suppose, as spectacle, as theatre, and I would suggest perhaps that shooting missiles at an airbase in Qatar, which it likely knows most of those missiles will get shot out of the air. That's the kind of thing it can sell to its domestic audience. Cutting the Strait of Hormuz, that is real economic pain it can inflict on the world, and that would ratchet up the pressure even more. Likely then to get those European leaders who were trying desperately at the 11th hour to try to get in the room with the Iranians to try to get a deal before Donald Trump ordered that strike on those nuclear sites. Obviously, that didn't go anywhere. I would imagine if the Hormuz Strait was shut, that would get those Europeans back trying to push for a diplomatic solution as quickly as possible. So, look, this is still early days. We don't know if the Iranian attack will stop with Qatar. We've heard speculation that there could be other bases around the region struck. We know that Iran has form hitting bases, for example, in Iraq, where I am now, as I was telling you just a few moments ago. So it's early yet to see what Iran is going to do. Diane?
And we did report last week about aircraft being removed from that airbase as a precaution. So it sounds like the U.S. was prepared for this retaliatory strike, even if it hadn't been intercepted.
Yeah, that's right, Diane. I mean, all U.S. officials knew that this was a possibility, that Iran would have to attack, it would have to strike back. As Martha was saying earlier, you know, this is almost a face-saving move that they feel that they have to go through with, of course, a very dangerous one. And last week, as you mentioned, we did report that that base had moved nearly 30 military aircraft. They've gone to other bases as this precaution. We also know that they've sent another aircraft carrier into the region, that these aircraft carriers can carry up to 60 fighter jets. All of that to help with any operation that might pop up to respond to these types of attacks, because of course, you know, everybody is very much on edge. They're very nervous because if anything were to get through and if an American were to be killed, you know, the speculation there is that President Trump would have to respond. And that's what has everyone concerned, because, you know, it goes from being this singular limited strike on Iranian nuclear sites, and then it moves into a wider war if there's this retaliation and back and forth and so forth. So, you know, a lot of this, the U.S. officials here say that they are hoping that everything, you know, that this is a one-off, that, you know, they can handle this, they can shoot these missiles down, and that the calmer heads prevail. Diane?
Ian, is this response, now that Qatar is saying they intercepted it, still enough to satisfy that need for Iran to retaliate politically for them, or do you think Iranian leadership is still under pressure to do more now?
I think we have to wait and see. Do they attack U.S. bases in Iraq, potentially the Fifth Fleet in Bahrain, where, interestingly, the Interior Ministry has advised people to stay indoors, seek shelter? That would certainly be a significant escalation. I think Anne's absolutely right. It depends what the report is on how much damage there is, whether U.S. personnel have been injured. But also, a lot of it depends on the mood of President Trump. I think there's many people will feel this was suicidal by Iran. It's already beleaguered. It's had its key leadership killed. It's had its armed forces decimated. Israel now controls the skies. And although this may be face-saving, which shouldn't surprise us because there's form there, the response from the U.S. to this could trigger further events inside Iran. And you've got this real danger now of this going from what felt like a localized conflict into a more regional conflict. And we have to wait and see what the response is, not just of Qatar, but of other Arab countries, especially in the Gulf, and the response of the United States. But there are real dangers here. This really is dangerous ground, that this starts to become far more regional. And that will bring in many players. It will involve the popular mobilization units inside Iraq. It potentially involves Hezbollah, who've also been active again today, and there will be consequences. Now, if the United States and others continue to try and degrade Iran's abilities just from the air, that is one thing. But if anybody is starting to suggest anything more significant, then we're in a totally different ballgame. But again, let's just be patient and wait and see exactly what the impact has been. Let's wait to hear from the President and the Defense Secretary and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs. But I would say for Iran and the future of the regime, if it didn't look tenuous already, it certainly does now. Remember, Israel specifically targeted the instruments that are used by the Iranian regime for suppression inside the country, the Basij, which is a kind of domestic security force that's used to enforce Iran's draconian laws, for example, against women, against protesters. They also targeted the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. They also dropped a bomb near a prison, an infamous prison inside Iran, used to house political prisoners. And Israel's defense minister has made no bones of the fact that this is about unsettling the regime and its grip on power. And you also had that late-night posting by President Trump when he also raised the question of whether regime change would be bad. And as much as officially U.S. and Israeli officials want to ignore that, it's starting to become a more and more pertinent question.
And Colonel Gagnor, how does Qatar go about repelling an attack like this and intercepting these missiles?
Dan, obviously for decades now, the U.S. has been interested in this region and considered Iran a threat. And so all of the Gulf states are tied in with the U.S. in very intricate, very sophisticated air and missile defense systems. So there are radars and links between countries that have radars. And so what we call the air picture over the Persian Gulf is probably covered like no other place in the world. So the ability to share that information, to share inbound missiles that are coming in, to be able to hand those off to various kinds of surface air missile defense capabilities is quite extraordinary. It's like no other place in the world where you have this much information sharing between countries. The missile systems like the THAAD and the Patriot can actually do what we've seen in Israel with some of their systems, and they can actually, as they track the inbound missiles, they can actually calculate where that missile is going to land. And if that missile is going to land, say, outside the fence line in a deserted area outside of Al Udeid Air Base, the system will not go after it. They'll just let it fall harmlessly in an open spot. They only go after, they calculate only those missiles that would hit either a residential area, an industrial area, a military base. Those are the ones they go after. But they have that ability to discern where the impact point is going to be and make a judgment on whether they should intercept that inbound missile.
And again, for anyone just joining us, we are looking at video from just moments ago of an Iranian missile attack on a U.S. air base in Qatar. The Qataris have said they've intercepted that attack, but we are, of course, waiting to see and hear of any damage there. This is the largest U.S. air base in all of the Middle East and has played a critical role in so many different conflicts, including Iraq, Afghanistan, strikes on Syria, and so forth. We are now, again, waiting to see the extent of the damage there, if any, but Qatar has said that they have managed to intercept a lot of that attack, if not all of it. And this could still play a critical role in the region. I want to go back to Colonel Steve Ganyard, who's walking us through a little bit about how this attack was intercepted and the protections at play. Actually, let's go to Rachel Scott, who's been following the reaction from the White House now. Rachel, we know the president is in the Situation Room now meeting with top leaders. Given this attack was intercepted, if there isn't a lot or any damage for that matter to the base, how much pressure is on President Trump to respond, or could he let this go?
Well, politically, this puts President Trump in a very tricky position. The president has been very clear, very direct, that any response from Iran will be met with a far greater response from the United States. But remember, President Trump as a candidate campaigned on getting the United States out of foreign conflict. He described himself as a peacemaker, even in his inaugural address. And so you have had this split in the Republican Party. And the president, over the last several days, I was told, was getting a series of phone calls from Republicans on Capitol Hill on different ends of the spectrum about whether the United States should get involved. Some, like Senator Lindsey Graham, urging the president for direct U.S. involvement. Others cautioning the president against it, saying that the United States needs to take a step back here and can support Israel as an ally and a friend, but doesn't need to be directly involved. We know the president's calculus on this started to change. Sources tell me that U.S. officials started to realize that Iran maybe wasn't serious about coming to the table for these nuclear talk discussions. I was also told in the last several days by sources that there was this urgent last-minute attempt to try to get Iranian officials and also U.S. officials in one room, and that President Erdogan of Turkey was trying to broker this meeting, speaking with the president directly at the G7 summit. We know that the president then ended his trip to the G7 summit in Canada abruptly. He traveled right back here to the White House, and every day since then he has been meeting with his national security team and his advisors, going over any potential threats to the United States and also the next movements here. But again, the president was very clear about this. In addition to not only warning Iran not to retaliate against the United States, we also heard from the president on social media just yesterday talking about the possibility of regime change. The president saying that it's not politically correct to use that term, but he went on to say that if the Iran supreme leader cannot make Iran great again, why not consider regime change? I had a chance to speak to the White House press secretary earlier today, and I asked her, what did the president exactly mean by that? Is he calling for the United States to get involved to accomplish that? Is he calling for Israel to get involved to accomplish that? Or is he talking about the Iranians? And she was very clear with me that the president was speaking about the Iranian people, saying that it's up to them to decide if they want to rise up to tackle that regime if they don't come to the table for diplomacy. Diane.
Rachel, thank you. And I want to go back to you because we're now hearing the first reaction from Israel to this attack.
Yeah, that's right. This was a spokesman for the chief spokesman for the Israeli Defense Forces, Efi Defrin, General Efi Defrin. He was asked about Iran's attacks on U.S. bases, saying that we're following developments that are being reported. We are in touch with our partners in the region. And, of course, Israel regards this as more proof of the violence, that Iran is a terrorist state that threatens not just Israel, but the region and the world. We're also hearing from Bahraini state television that they have closed their airspace. The Interior Ministry in Bahrain, which of course is home to the US Fifth Fleet, had essentially issued an order advising people to stay at home. Now, no indications that anything has happened there, but it's just worth reiterating that the concerns about what just happened in Qatar are not just felt in that country, but I think throughout the Gulf region. But again, just to be very clear, we need to know whether any of these got through. A US official speaking to ABC News has essentially said that the Qataris and the Americans were involved in the shoot-downs. They're also saying that they don't think any of those projectiles landed in Al Udeid Air Base. Interestingly, Press TV, which is the pro-Iranian or Iranian government television, is claiming that they did land there, but no evidence of that.
And what more are you hearing about the way these missiles were intercepted?
Well, again, this has come from U.S. officials. We know that the Qataris have basically U.S. Air defense systems, and of course the U.S. base at Al Udeid has some as well.
And are other assets in the region as protected as this airbase is, or are they more vulnerable?
Well, this is an extraordinarily protected airbase because this is the nerve center, as we've been talking about, for U.S. Central Command. So we know that the attacks on the Iranian nuclear facilities, the flights would have been coordinated out of this base. So it's a very, very critical base. And of course, you know, they don't speak to the security of other bases, but you can guess that this one is probably better protected than others. And that does raise concerns for other spots throughout the region. And we are just hearing, Diane, that there have not been any impacts with this attack in Qatar. We are hearing that they are not tracking casualties at this time. So certainly, I think many people are breathing a sigh of relief because the hope is that this will be contained and will not escalate further. But again, as everybody likes to say, the enemy does have a vote in that. And we don't, you know, we have to wait and see how the Iranians calculate all of this, Diane.
And Rachel, of course, there are lives at stake. There's national security at stake. There's also money at stake here, particularly when it comes to oil and gas prices. How concerned is the White House about that?
Well, it's something that the White House is obviously keeping in mind and folding into their calculus as they're evaluating this ongoing situation and also tensions in the Middle East. But of course, the primary focus from the president and the administration is keeping American lives safe. And so the fact that the target here was our troops, our air base, that could possibly prompt a very sharp response from the president if he decides to move forward. And after warning consistently and repeatedly against retaliation, it does put the ball now in the court of the United States to decide how forceful they want to respond, also possibly knowing that Iran could respond again. And this is the type of tit for tat that many Republican lawmakers and even some Democrats warned about, that warned the president against. Yes, while the president has been adamant that he does not want to see Iran have any nuclear program or nuclear weapon, at the same time there was that campaign promise that he was going to be the mediator, that he was going to be the peacemaker as well. And of course, Diane, I will tell you, all of this comes amid ongoing questions about just how much damage the United States was actually able to do to Iran's nuclear facilities. We heard from the president saying that they were totally and completely obliterated, but we have heard from other members of the administration sort of distancing themselves maybe slightly from that language, maybe not being as strong when they've talked about what actually occurred in that military strike. Diane.
James, what are other bases in this region now doing to try to prepare for possible attacks from Iran?
Well, they've all been told, Diane, essentially to shelter in place. And some of them are very, very simple indeed. A few years ago, I visited one of the smaller bases in northern Syria. Now, there are U.S. forces in Syria and Iraq there as part of the effort to keep ISIS at bay. People will remember ISIS, the caliphate, once ruled an area that's governed a huge swathe of northern Syria and Iraq. Together with the United States and the Europeans and others, a coalition pushed those ISIS fighters back, decimated the caliphate, the Kurds on the front foot fighting alongside Arab forces as well. But there remain pockets of ISIS fighters across Syria and Iraq, and they remain, and American troops remain in Syria to try to keep those forces try to keep ISIS at bay, but also advise the local government in both cases in Syria and in Iraq on basically how to police the region. And actually just yesterday there was a suicide attack in Damascus that killed over 20 people, and ISIS, the Syrian government say, claimed responsibility for that attack. So ISIS is still very much a threat, nowhere near the same kind of threat that it used to be, but it remains a serious dynamic in this part of the world, and that is why US forces remain. Now, they are more kind of vulnerable to attacks than other bases because these are just much smaller locations. We went to one of the bases in the north of Syria, and it was essentially just a large barn in the middle of a field. And yes, there will have been military installations around it, but this is not the kind of large air base that you may have seen pictures of in places like Qatar or indeed a naval base in Bahrain. These are much smaller. So these US service personnel are essentially much more vulnerable to attack. We actually saw that in January of last year at Tower 22 in Jordan, where US service personnel were killed by Iranian proxies there, and the US had to figure out a response, which was in the end striking their proxies in Syria and in Iraq. So these are much smaller bases around this part of the world. That makes them more vulnerable. They're also much closer proximity to the Iranians. Diane.
Yeah, they're not all as well protected as Al Udeid. James, thank you. And we're getting a look at some of the flight radar over the Middle East right now. Again, many areas in the region are bracing for possible retaliation from Iran. And the Qatari officials actually closed their airspace just shortly before Iran announced this missile attack on the Al Udeid air base. I want to go back to our Ian panel in Tel Aviv. Ian, where does this attack leave us now in terms of this conflict in general and watching for Iran's and the U.S.'s next move?
Well, I think at the time right now, it looks like a limited attack by Iran. A show of limited force, perhaps, one that will provide succor to the domestic audience, one that will allow Iran to save face and say, look, we responded against America in retaliation for the strikes inside Iran. I mean, of course, the reality is that there is no equivalency whatsoever in volume and certainly not in impact. We have no reason to believe that any of those missiles that were fired or rockets that were fired into Al Udeid or elsewhere in Qatar were not intercepted at the moment. So this could well be a limited response, and therefore then attention turns to how the US then replies. As we saw back in 2020 after Iran retaliated for the assassination of General Qasem Soleimani, the response was limited. It did have an impact, of course, on those US bases, but it became the end of the matter. It was generally conceded that would be it. That it looks like where we are right now. But again, we have to wait and hear from the president.
And many now hoping that's the case this time around too, Ian. And we're now hearing from a U.S. official telling ABC News the Al Udeid air base was attacked by Iran using short and medium-range missiles. We have no reports of casualties at this time, and that official says the attack has ended. So we'll leave it there. We'll have much more on this later.
Once again, I'm Alex Stone at ABC News with our coverage from our colleagues there. A response underway from Iran. Missiles fired at a major U.S. base in Qatar. U.S. officials confirming and saying that they have intercepted Iranian missiles, with the Qataris also assisting in those shoot-downs. There have been no impacts, we are told, at the base at Al Udeid, according to the officials. Another U.S. official saying that the U.S. is not tracking any casualties from what has gone on today. For my colleagues, I'm Alex Stone. You've been listening to live coverage from ABC News.
And we're back to KSL. We're hearing that the Iranians have attacked two U.S. bases, one in Qatar, one in Iraq. The base in Qatar is in Al Udeid. It has 10,000 troops that we're aware of. There were 10 Iranian missiles launched into that particular U.S. base, all of which seem to have been stopped. They're reporting no U.S. casualties at all. There was one missile fired into a U.S. base in Iraq. We don't know anything about that particular base, but we do know that the Pentagon is still claiming, Holly, that there were no casualties at all. So Iranian officials did say there would be retaliation. It was sort of a one for one. You fired this many missiles into our jurisdiction. We're firing this many back. Some people are saying, if you sort of read between the lines, that it may be an Iranian official way of telling their public we're going to do something, yeah, even though it doesn't seem to have been very effective. The problem now is you've got two other nations involved in this,
right?
Qatar and Iraq, and the Qatari people are saying we reserve the right to respond now.
That's right. And so an unfolding situation right now, one that I think the United States expected, because they launched those attacks on nuclear sites in Iran. So they did expect that there would be some kind of response. And I think, again, we're going to wait and see where it goes from here. The President of the United States is in meetings right now, and we'll see how it unfolds. We're watching live developments as it's coming from the Middle East right now, especially Qatar.
and we may have some ongoing coverage through News Nation. We'll break to them right now.
And that isn't happening as far as I know. There isn't a significant opposition force in Iran. There isn't training of opposition fighters to go inside Iran. So I think we're pretty far from regime change, because regime change won't happen without some fighting on the ground.
All right, so regime change would not happen without some fighting. What is the likelihood, do you think, that we could see U.S. boots on the ground, whether it is in Iran or in one of these other countries?
I think it's way too early to tell. I think the Trump administration is very reluctant to be drawn into a situation where we have to put U.S. troops on the ground in Iran and put them in danger. But anything can happen, and it depends on what Iran does next. It also depends on the Iranian people. Regime change will also require upheaval and an uprising by the Iranian people. They've been mass protests in the recent past in Iran. We know there's a huge amount of the population that does not like the regime, that would like for the regime to go away. But whether they have the capacity, given that Iran is a police state, that they arrest and torture any dissidents in Iran, whether the people have the capacity to demonstrate that they, with some help from the outside, can overthrow the regime is not clear at this point.
And from your perspective, David, which I think is really a unique perspective considering your expertise and your background here, how much of this do you think, and America's involvement overall, can be tied back to President Trump withdrawing from President Obama's 2015 Iran nuclear deal?
Well, I think it's pretty closely tied to it. And, you know, President Trump made that decision to rip up the JCPOA. But there was nothing put in place of it. President Biden and the Biden administration tried to get a new deal in place. They weren't able to work out an agreement. You know, if that deal had not been ripped up by President Trump, it would still be most, if not all, of the provisions would still be in place. And most weapons inspectors felt that Iran was complying with the requirements of the JCPOA. So had Trump not ripped that up, we might not be here.
And I think, you know, I would say most people want to see peace. Most people do not want to see fighting and war. How did the U.S. and its allies maintain pressure on Iran to ultimately bring them to the table to negotiate some sort of peace, whatever that ends up looking like? Is it more strikes?
I think it's more strikes if Iran continues to do retaliatory strikes against the U.S. and against our allies. I think it certainly requires the U.S. to stand firm on the principle that Iran cannot have nuclear weapons. And if the damage assessments suggest that the 3 nuclear sites that we bombed in Iran were not significantly harmed and set back, then we might have to do another round of airstrikes just to ensure that it's not easy for Iran to develop nuclear weapons. And then it's really in the hands of Khamenei and whether he wants to go to the table. He's 84 years old. He's already been planning for succession. Is he ready to die in a war with the United States, or is he willing to make some concessions, have a nuclear deal, make clear to the U.S. and to the rest of the world that Iran is giving up completely its ability to enrich uranium and to develop nuclear weapons?
And David Tafuri.
We're listening to ongoing coverage from News Nation of the Iranian response to the U.S. attacks on their nuclear sites. Iran has attacked 2 U.S. bases, one in Qatar, one in Iraq. We're told we're up to date right now with the Pentagon claiming that there were no U.S. casualties. We'll continue this to listen to what's going on with News Nation.
Military base has roughly 10,000 U.S. troops stationed there. It is the largest installation in the Middle East. It also serves as the forward headquarters for U.S. Central Command, better known as CENTCOM. I'd like to bring back Major Glenn Ignacio, a military expert who retired from the U.S. Air Force as a special operations commander. Major, thank you so much for giving us some of your time once again. Talk about this being the forward headquarters for U.S. Central Command, CENTCOM. How significant is that?
Well, it's pretty significant because one of the things that they have in there, or at least we transitioned from Saudi Arabia, is Joint Task Force Southwest Asia. So basically, it's a large command and control system in there where we can see the entire region. We can see our space assets, our air assets, and everything. So that type of command and control is located there. Not only that, but we have a lot of B-1 bombers, our strategic bombers, our air refueling capability was there. Again, some of those resources have been pulled back because of this anticipated and escalatory thing that's happened between Israel and Iran. But it is a significant base, and that's where the focus of most of our forces and our command and control has been. And it's been there for many years.
All right, so Major, I want to get your reaction to this reporting from the New York Times that Iran coordinated these attacks with Qatari officials and actually gave advanced notice that the attacks were coming to try to minimize casualties. If this is in fact true, what does that tell you? What is your reaction?
Honestly, it doesn't surprise me. As I mentioned earlier, as soon as I heard that the airspace is closed, and I'm sorry, I think it's comical because I just looked around and I said, we're going to have a response from Iran soon. And so it was very predictive. And if we can have that kind of insight here, just understanding the airspace is closed, I do believe that there's some coordination there. One, there is a sort of a close relationship with the Qataris and Iran just because of their geological, together right there. But at the same time, if we're talking about the Iran has to recognize that they have to save face and do something and coordinate as much as they can where there's no real damage to Americans, so there's not a massive strike or response. I get it. I don't think it's far-fetched at all.
Do you think, Major, that the U.S. at this point is now forced to respond similarly to how Iran, was forced to respond from their perspective?
Yeah, great question. I was thinking about this in the time here. Is that I think that if I was in the room and I was understanding what's going on, I can see President Trump saying, "Hey, look, I want to see a response package if I need to get a response package. I want to talk to the Qataris to find out how do they want to respond because it was their nation. If I do respond from other military bases in Saudi Arabia or UAE, I need to talk to them to find out how they would be impacted if we did do those launches, and sort of set that to the side. The other thing is how do we protect our troops and everybody else around the world in case there's an Iranian threat, and then the third thing is, hey, you know what? I have to consider the political impact. Everybody thought I was going to war with Iran by striking them. If I stand down now, I'm showing them that I'm not going to war. That's the thing that I can't tell as far as what they're going to decide, but I'm sure that that is just one of the permutations that they're going to look at to figure out what their decision is today.
All right, so we know, at least at this base in Qatar, that roughly 10,000 U.S. troops are stationed there. How do we keep our U.S. service members safe, Major? Because right now there are a lot of families who are worried. As of right now, there are no reports of any casualties or significant damage. But how do we make sure to keep our troops safe? Because that, of course, is what is most important to Americans.
Absolutely, and these types of threats between the launches against our troops in Iraq and all the other areas in Syria and everything, it has always been a threat if it was from Iran or some of these terrorist factions or anything. So there's a lot of defensive systems that are there established to exactly get this kind of force protection. As far as the capabilities we have to bring to bear on any threat, if it's Iran or anything else, is again we have got the Fifth Fleet in Bahrain, you've got the bases all through the Middle East, Jordan, UAE, Saudi Arabia, and of course in Qatar. So there's a massive amount of force there, not only offensively, but more importantly, defensively. So that force protection needs to be established. We also have to look at where we're the weakest and to make sure that our U.S. bases and our bases around the world are on a threat condition to make sure that nothing does happen, because it may not just be Iran, but it could be somebody else that's a sympathizer. So we don't let our guard down. That's the biggest thing there. And always do not create a situation that does not exist yet. Do not create the future that doesn't exist. React to what is happening at this moment and stay in that particular moment.
Yeah, react to what is happening.
Boy, we're hearing more and more reaction to what's going on in the Middle East. Iran has launched attacks against several U.S. bases, one in Qatar, one in Iraq. We're hearing no casualties on that. The Qatari base is the largest base in the region, the largest U.S. base in the region with some 10,000 troops. Wondering, Holly, what the response is going to be from the United States and whether or not the Iranian officials will say, okay, we're we're even. Let's
Right.
sit down and talk.
That's right. That's right. And I don't know. I mean, some of the news headlines are hopes of any kind of discussion right now are just obliterated, to use President Trump's word.
Yeah, I would almost hope the opposite. I know we're hearing some optimistic and some pessimistic responses to what's going on. Maybe this opens the door. Maybe if the Iranian officials are saying we needed to respond, we needed to do something for our people. Nobody was hurt. Not
Right.
a single U.S.
Right.
U.S. troop was injured at all. But we did fire our tit for tat.
We made our point. Yeah.
We made our point. Let's sit down and negotiate.
So on the BBC right now, I'm reading that Iran maintains that the attack was meant to target the U.S. and not Qatar. Right, that they're friends with them and they have warm and friendly relations. But Qatar has already said that they are reserving the right to retaliate because they had missiles sent into their airspace.
And I wonder what that retaliation would look like. There must be quite a base there because they were able to stop 10 out of 10 missiles coming in. So you've got to imagine that the sophistication at that Qatari base was significant. It's called Al Udeid military base in Qatar, and it is a huge military base. We don't know much about the one in Iraq. We do know that one missile was fired into that one. It seems like an odd number to fire one
just
missile.
To make a point, I think.
Right, and no response from the Iraqi officials or from the United States as it relates to that particular base. We're really focused a lot on the Qatari base, which is a huge base. I mean,
Bahrain is close by too, and they have sounded their air sirens and urged all of their residents to seek shelter. They feel like they are a likely next target. So there are people in the Middle East who are preparing for this to be more than just a one-time thing.
Boy, what a way to start the week, Holly. This is not what we wanted to do. This is not what we wanted to be talking about today. Let's hope cooler heads prevail. Let's hope that the administration will say, okay, let's sit down with this. You know, Russia was on the phone apparently visiting with the Iranian officials today. Do they want to come in and mediate? Would the U.S. allow them to mediate? China had offered at one point to mediate, and that would seem to have been thwarted. But it seems like there's got to be some level of mediation. The United Nations, somebody needs to come in.
So Russia has been getting drones from Iran, and so to have that capability taken out changes the nature of the war in Ukraine, right? So there's a lot of moving parts to this, and I think we've heard several of the reporters say it's too early to see what's actually going to happen, and we should not jump to conclusions and project what might happen.
I'm sure we're going to hear a lot more of this from Maria Shilaos, who will be up next, and hopefully we'll have some good results and something good to talk about tomorrow morning. Join us then.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Good afternoon. KSL News Time is 12 o'clock noon, and this is Midday. I'm Maria Shilaos. KSL's top story. And it is breaking news coverage on the attack of a U.S. military base by Iran. Iran is retaliating for the U.S. strike Saturday night against its nuclear facilities. ABC News White House correspondent Karen Travers has the very latest.
A U.S. official confirms that Iran has fired missiles at Qatar, targeting the Al Udeid air base, the largest U.S. military base in the region. Iran has been preparing missiles to target U.S. military facilities in the region, according to this official. The president was scheduled to meet with his national security team in the Oval Office this afternoon. President Trump visited Al Udeid air base last month when he traveled to the Middle East. After the strikes on Iran Saturday, the president warned Iran against retaliation. Karen Travers, ABC News, the White House.
The president is meeting in the Situation Room with his national security team. More from ABC's Ian Pannell, who says Qatar is claiming they intercepted the missiles and that there were no injuries.
These bases have sophisticated